Good evening. Good evening and welcome to Tuesday, January 17, 2023 regular school board meeting. The time is 6 p.m. The school board would like to take this moment to respectfully acknowledge who are residing on the traditional land of the Dene people. Our mission is to provide an excellent, equitable education and a safe, supportive environment so all students will succeed and contribute to a diverse and changing society. Our pledge this evening will be led by Ms. Hardy.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Pollen, would you please call the roll?
Colonel Alvarado is excused. Colonel Surrey is expected. Miss Smith?
Here.
Mrs. Burnett?
Here.
Thank you. Mrs. Matheson is excused. Mrs. Smith?
Here.
Thank you. Mrs. Hardy?
Here.
Thank you. Miss Marati?
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Doran?
Here.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We the people, state champions. Our value is high expectations and educational opportunities to inspire high achievement. We the people, state competition showcase was held in December in Fairbanks in West Valley's high school, competed and winning the title of state champion. The We the People competition is a mock congressional hearing competition focused on constitutional analysis and is sponsored by the Center for Civic Education. Participating in the state showcase qualifies West Valley to compete at nationals in Washington, D.C. in April. Amy Galloway from West Valley will now present the We the People state competition. Champions. And I will lead you to the podium. I'm going to move you over just a smidge.
You want me here? So you can be there. Thank you. Thank you, President Sanderson. All right, We the People students, where does liberty live? We the People students, where does liberty live?
In the hearts of men and women.
All right, thank you. So congratulations are in order for taking first place in the state We the People simulated congressional hearing competition. And I want to take this time to thank you, though, for an even greater accomplishment, students. Dedicating yourself to healing the heart of democracy and embracing both the rights and responsibilities of citizenship. As author Parker Palmer said, democracy is always a risk. Government of the people, by the people, for the people is a nonstop experiment in the strengths and weaknesses of our institutions, our communities, and of the human heart itself. And the outcome can never be taken for granted. I have watched you dedicate yourself to that outcome of democratic citizenship through civil discourse, informed decision-making, and the capacity to build community. And one thing I now know, you are our best hope. So congratulations on being We the People state champions, and hopefully we're going to DC in April. Individually, you are powerful, yet collectively, during this class, you have become a community, formidable in your connection, creating a legacy of intellectualism, all while leaving a profound impact on my heart. This dedication to democratic ideals is why you are the We the People champions. And as you continue your journey, there's one thing I want you to never forget. Never forget that you belong. You belong in every hall and in every room where democratic decisions are being made. As former Representative Shirley Chisholm said, if they don't give you a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. Parents, I also want to thank you for supporting your students as well as this class. You should be so proud. Michelle Dammel, Jennifer Morgan, Flora Roddy, thank you for volunteering to help run and organize the competition. This year we had no coordinator and you guys stepped up, so thank you. Sarah Gillum and student teacher Mr. Benjamin Fix, thanks for supporting this class. And finally, thank you to every Fairbanks We the People alumni who kept this program alive in Alaska. While this is the last year of this program, it is not because of the lack of student support. You are talented and dedicated citizens who embody Judge Learned Hand's words that liberty lives in the hearts of men and women, and when it dies there, no constitution, no law, and no court can save it. So congratulations, Team We the People. I am proud of you, and I am ready for you to go out and save the Republic. So not every student can be here. Family, work, many obligations, but the student, I will read everybody's name. But as you hear your name, you guys can get up and start ready to come up, and you can stand up here and you can get your certificate of commendation and then meet and thank the school board members. All right, so Sophia Aquistapache. We can clap after everyone. I'll just keep going quickly. Okay, Purita Anderson. Emily Andrewley. Kenna Bashirs. Do you want to give that to her? Andrew Breen. Alana Brown. I feel like I'm at graduation. Naima Carter. Jordan Gadzina. Evelyn Golden. Riga Grubis. Madeline Guffey. Melody Helmricks. Leo Kraus. Hazel Langley. Aviana Lupton. Malachi Matheson. Jacob Odom. Cameron Payson. Elle Parks. Augustin Stanley Strom. And Talia Stout. I present to you the West Valley final We the People team.
Thank you, Ms. Galloway, and to your students. And I will be coming by to talk with you guys, a project that I would like you guys to take on. Again, every time we have a group of young students to come before us, we see the power of what our teaching staff and what these young students are able to produce and to carry that message forward. There's nothing like having these students come before us and what they've achieved. So again, on behalf of the board, we congratulate you on this and wish you well when you go to DC. Thank you. Okay, staff resignation, we have core value is maintaining high expectations and educational opportunities to inspire higher achievement. Sandy Weaver, budget specialist to Fairbanks North Star Borough School District, retired after 38 years of service with this district. The district would like to express its appreciation for her outstanding contributions, devoted service, unwavering dedication, and sincerely thank her for a job well done. Congratulates her on her retirement and wishes her all the best as she starts the next chapter of her life. Mr. Graw would like to say a few words and has a certificate from Ms. Weaver.
All right, thank you, President Sanderson. I'm going to have Sandy come on up. I've embarrassed her several times, but all right, Sandy joined the district sometime during the Nixon administration. Just kidding. Sandy first joined the district as a temporary employee back in the summer of 1984. So I got this. We didn't have current information in our technology system, so we were in the warehouse digging through dusty boxes, and so some of this might not be totally accurate. But summer of 1984, Sandy worked in several temporary capacities with transportation activities, special ed, et cetera, et cetera. She first started in a permanent position in November 1987 as a kitchen aide at West Valley High School. She's going to nod every time I'm correct. She then transitioned to the front office at West Valley in August of 1988 and worked both as an attendance secretary and the admin secretary.
Started in the counseling office,
Okay.
and then we went to a variety of things. But
Right, different. So for 22 years, worked in the front office there at West Valley High School.
Yeah.
In January 2010, she moved to downtown to the ADC and became the executive assistant to one of our assistant superintendents. And then in July of 2013, became the budget specialist for the school district in the admin services office. And I've had the pleasure of working with Sandy now for about the last 4.5 years, and you know, budget is a complicated, big job, and I from day one of being here at the district, and we've been through several challenging budgets over the last few years, and the amount of patience and understanding, and the amount Sandy's position, she reached all corners of the district, staff in many different capacities, admin secretaries, principals, department directors, board members, and she's just done such an amazing job at providing information and clarity and helped people in a very complicated, tough topic. And I've appreciated her efforts. She's helped me to be a better CFO of the district, and I'm just so grateful for everything that she's done for not only me, but also staff. And you think over 38 years, how many lives, I estimate it's tens of thousands of folks' experiences as students and staff. 22 years at West Valley High School, that's tens of thousands of students right there. And just want to sincerely thank Sandy for everything she's done for the organization, and congratulate her on her much-deserved retirement. So thank you, Sandy.
Thank
And we have her certificate for 75 or 35 years plus with the district, and a pin.
Oh, thank you.
And we know one of your pastimes will be spending more time out at the lake at the cabin, and so we we made up a welcome sign for Sandy at her cabin to post up her cabin.
you.
So
Thank you.
Thank you. I had to prepare. Working many years in the district, I can honestly say it's been a wonderful experience and perfect for myself and my family. Now that our children are grown, granddaughter is here, and we have a lot of exciting events coming our way, I'm excited to see what my next chapter in life will bring. I will miss my work family, where I have so many wonderful friends and colleagues. I always have a special place in my heart for the students, families, and everyone in the district. Thank you for the great years. Do this? Yep. Am I supposed to go? Am I supposed to?
Next on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Our core value is student-centered, center everything we do on student and student learning. Consent agenda items marked in an asterisk are considered routine items not requiring public discussion by the school board. Unless removed from the consent agenda, asterisk items will be automatically approved when the agenda is adopted. Questions concerning these items should be directed to the administration before the meeting. If the superintendent or member of the public wishes to have an item removed from the consent agenda, the request must be made to a board member anytime prior to the start of the meeting. The board member has the discretion to accept or deny the request. Only board members may remove an item from the consent agenda. If an item is removed from the consent agenda, it shall be considered separately as the last item of new business. Asterisk items will be then adopted by one single motion.
Move to adopt the agenda with consent items.
Second.
Ms. Paulin, would you call for the vote?
Move to amend the agenda to remove item H2, annual audit report.
Second.
Okay,
May I speak?
go ahead.
Thank you. I'm requesting to remove this item. Although I asked last week about this, we did not receive the 232-page annual comprehensive financial report to include the audited financial statements until 3:10 p.m. today. And this was not added to the public agenda until 3:10 p.m. today. We and the community need more than a few hours during a workday to review the audited financials before we can ethically vote on whether to approve these audited financials or not.
Any discussion? Mr. Dorn?
Thank you. I appreciate the perspective that Ms. Marati has offered, but I do feel that we've met the needs and maybe a clarification from administration. Do I understand, and I think I've seen it, that the full report has been on our website for a while?
Since November 15th.
Okay. And that I think in terms of what's attached, we have changed auditors, and I think a little different procedure is taken. The big thing to me is we have a graphic of the actual report, the PAFR, I believe it's now called, instead of the CAFR, and I don't know what all the letters stand for, but that the essence is there, and the most important piece for me is that we have the transmittal letter from the auditors attesting to the the veracity of the audit, and in this case, a very clean audit. So I think we have all the pieces that are there that do allow us to go ahead and act on the auditor's report tonight.
Ms. Marati?
Ms. Smith had a question. I'm happy to wait if she wants to go first.
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand. Mrs. Smith?
Thank you. I also support proceeding with the vote. I just felt that Ms. Marati's objection deserved conversation.
Thank you. Ms. Marati?
In regards to the audit being available on November 15th, the board was not made aware of that. And I am the audit rep, and I was not made aware of that. It was not mentioned in any committee or board meeting. And so, again, I feel that we need more time to review, and then we can come back for a vote.
Is there any further discussion?
Ms. Anderson, if I might.
Go right ahead.
I just want to speak to some of Mr. Doran's thoughts. We did change companies, and they do have a different timeline, and they do have a different process. So, Mr. DeGroff, you want to talk a little bit to that, or Ms. Herbert, whoever's got the lowdown on the timeline and how this company is very different than the previous?
Yeah, just thanks, Ms. Moline. Just a little bit different process and timeline, as she mentioned. Though that difference doesn't change the fact that, as Mr. Doran mentioned, very clean audit report. We have Ms. Herbert, who's ready to report on the specifics of the audit, as well as the auditor themselves, a representative from the auditor, ready to speak to us tonight. So we would recommend that the board move forward with the vote tonight. Certainly, it's your prerogative of what you'd like to do moving forward, but we're very happy and pleased with the results of the audit. Very clean audit, and that's what we have to provide.
Thank you, Mr. Grau. Ms. Paulin, would you call for the vote, please?
Miss, this is to the amended motion on the floor?
So a yes vote would mean that we would amend it, and a no vote means that we will move forward.
Okay, Ms. Smith?
No?
Colonel Alvarado is excused. Colonel Surrey?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Doran?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Burnett?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Matheson is excused. Mrs. Smith?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Hardy?
No.
Thank you. Ms. Marati?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson?
No.
Motion failed.
Okay. Now we have a vote on the motion on the floor.
Motion on the floor to approve the agenda.
Yes.
Colonel Surrey?
Can you remind me, I'm voting now for the original one, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Burnett?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Marati?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Doran?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Right, thank you. Oh, Ms. Moline, would you read the consent agenda, please?
The board has accepted the award in the amount of $4,000 for the Cars Safeway Alaska Education Grant from Cars Safeway and the Alaska Council of School Administrators. The award in the amount of $17,400 for the Office of Assistant Substance Misuse and Addiction Prevention Grant from the Alaska Department of Health and Social Services. The award in the amount of $2,694,411.70 for the CARES 2 Coronavirus Relief Supplement Appropriation Act in the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund from the U.S. Department of Education through the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development. And the award in the amount of $16,584,901.60 for the CARES 3 American Rescue Plan Act and Elementary Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund 3 from the United States Department of Education through the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development. The board has approved the fundraising requests of Anderson Crawford Elementary School's request to fundraise approximately $3,500 by hosting Scholastic Book Fair on February 15th through February 24th, 2023, to raise funds to purchase books and supplies for the library. Pearl Creek Elementary's request to fundraise approximately $3,500 by hosting a Scholastic Book Fair on February 13th through February 22nd, 2023, to raise funds to purchase books and supplies for their library. Wood River Elementary School's request to fundraise approximately $2,000 by hosting Scholastic Book Fair on February 15th through February 28th, 2023, to raise funds to support their library needs. Wood River Elementary's request permission to fundraise approximately $2,000 by hosting a readathon on March 6th through March 24th, 2023, to raise funds to support the school's library needs and to encourage reading. Hutchinson High School's request to fundraise approximately $2,500 by hosting an open gym for adult community non-competitive basketball on Sunday and Wednesday evenings throughout the school year to raise funds to support the school's basketball team. And West Valley High School's request to fundraise approximately $6,000 by hosting an ice cream bar and popcorn sale during the parent-teacher conference on February 21st and 22nd, 2023, and to raise funds to assist the JROTC with travel expenses. The board has approved Travel 4 FNSBSD Federal Programs Department request to send 27 6th through 8th graders to the migrant education students with chaperones to Anchorage, Alaska, March 12th through 18th, 2023, to participate in the Alaska Native Science and Engineering Program. Cost to the district was allocated for this travel budget determination, and if any local, state, or federal travel or health warnings are issued, the students will not travel. Boreal Sun Charter School's request to send 8th grade students and chaperones to Anchorage and Homer, Alaska, April 18th through the 25th, 2023, to explore Alaska and its flora and fauna at no cost to the district, and if any local or state, federal travel or health warnings are issued, the students will not travel. Chinook Montessori Charter School's request to send 28th graders and 2 chaperones to Flagstaff, Arizona, April 12th through 19th, 2023, for an educational trip at no cost to the district. If any local, state, or federal travel or health warnings are issued, the students will not travel. Ben Eielson Junior Senior High School's request to send JROTC cadets and chaperones to Camp Perry, Idaho, February 8th through 12th, 2023, to compete in the U.S. Air Force Junior ROTC Air Rifle Service Championship at no cost to the district, and if any local, state, or federal travel or health warnings are issued, the students will not travel. And West Valley and Lathrop High School's request for permission for their music students to raise approximately $6,500 to send students and chaperone to All Northwest Honor Festival in Bellevue, Washington, February 16th through the 19th, 2023, to participate in music honor ensembles at no cost to the district, and if any local, state, or federal travel or health warnings are issued, the students will not travel. The board has accepted donations of $1,800 from Arctic Light Elementary School PTA to Arctic Light Elementary School to support the school's classroom activity and field trips. $2,000 from Barnett Magnet PTA to Barnett Magnet School to support the school's PE department. $3,000 from Weller Elementary PTA to Weller Elementary School to support the school's classrooms with the purchase of document cameras. $1,500 from EOSC Welfare Fund to Ben Eielson Junior Senior High School to support the school's World Declamation Team. $5,400 from EOSC Welfare Fund to Ben Eielson Junior Senior High School to support the school's junior ROTC travel expenses. $27,000 from Fairbanks Collision and Glass Service LLC to Hutchinson High School to support the school's automotive collision and repair class. $2,000 from Fairbanks to Youth Support and Charity Fund to Lathrop High School to support the school's boys basketball team. $2,000 from American Legion C, Russell Huber Post 57 to Lathrop High School to support the school's junior ROTC program. $4,700 from Fairbanks Tennis Association to Lathrop High School to support the school's tennis program. $1,000 from Alaska Community Foundation to North Pole High School to support the school's 2022-2023 travel expenses. $2,000 from American Legion C, Russell Huber Post 57 to North Pole High School to support the school's ROTC travel expenses. $2,600 from 907 Supply Surplus LLC to North Pole High School to support the school's junior ROTC travel expenses. $5,000 from Delta Airlines Foundation to North Pole High School to support the school's student activities. $9,446.37 from VFW Post 10029 to North Pole High School to support the school's ROTC travel expenses. $1,361 from VFW Post 10029 to West Valley High School to support the school's rifle program. $1,733.21 from the West Valley Baseball Boosters to West Valley High School to support the school's baseball team. $2,000 from Rashad Dominic to West Valley High School to support the school's basketball team. $9,300 from West Valley High School Football Booster Club to West Valley High School to support the school's football team. And $12,000 from West Valley Basketball Booster Club to West Valley High School to support the school's boys-girls basketball program. The board has accepted the monthly management report for November through December 2022. The board has approved the personal action report for the period November 23rd, 2022 to January 5th, 2023 is provided. And the minutes from the December 6th, 2022 regular meeting, December 6th, 2022 special meeting, and November 8th work session as submitted. The board has acknowledged the personnel information report period November 23rd, 2022 through January 5th, 2023 is provided. The budget transfer report for the period November 16th through December 31st, 2022, the board's reading file, and the board's coming events and meeting announcements.
Thank you, Ms. Moline. And again, I will just say, at every time that consent agenda is read, and the donations that come in from our community partners and parents and support is overwhelming and is very thankful. So I want to acknowledge that tonight. Next on our agenda is public comments on reports and non-agenda items. The core value is engage with students, families, staff, and community to support student success. Public comments are unrectified and shall state their full name, spelling their last name, and their city of residence for the record. Board members may ask questions for clarification. Although there is time at the end of each meeting for the school board and chief administrator comments, some concerns may not be able to be addressed immediately, as additional information may be needed to be gathered. Public comment, input, ideas, and suggestions are welcome on salary, benefits, and other contractual items regarding the Education Support Staff Association, the Fairbanks Education Association, and agreements. First person on our list is Glenn Jackson. If you'll come forward and state your name, spelling your last and place of residence. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, my name is Glenn Jackson, Jackson, North Pole. So I'd like to put something on the table to possibly have change down the road with the negotiations when it comes to the contract for teachers. And it is Chapter 11-2, Policy Manual, Policy 1132.2, Public's Right to Know. In the event that, and it was established in everything in January 15th, 1985. I think that anytime that a teacher, educator, and a student has a problem and the teacher, educator seems to be at fault for whatever discovery was made. I think that the parents are duly right and entitled to know what type of disciplinary action was levied against that teacher. I don't feel that it should be held and withheld from the public. This is a public school. It's a public district. And the reason why I bring that up is because I submitted a letter on October 14th about a teacher putting a depiction of things that had correlation in between a TSA agent, a doctor, and a prostitute. So, on a board. So, if you guys don't mind, I'd like to submit my application to, maybe have maybe a classroom where I could teach your daughter or your son on prostitutes, if that would be possible. I think I would have fun with that. Because apparently I have had no reply from you people since October. I sent it not only to the district, but I sent it to each and every single one of you. The most that you could do to positively impact this environment and this community is to recuse yourself from your positions right now. That would be the best thing you could do.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. That is your time.
So not only that, I have a full-time job.
Mr. Jackson.
I have a full-time position, right?
Mr. Jackson.
I signed up to be a school bus driver. I resigned as a part-time school bus driver on account of all of you.
Mr. Jackson, that is your 2
I
minutes.
feel the kids need to go to school, but I'm no longer going to transport children to an environment from being home safe with their families. So you people can pervert.
The next is Ellen Weiser. Would you please come forward? And Ms. Pollen, could you please keep me abreast if there's anyone on Zoom thank you.
Hello, my name is Ellen Weiser, Weiser, and I live in Fairbanks. I am president of Kids Voting North Alaska. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan voter education program to help students in interior Alaska become lifelong voters. Thomas Jefferson once said, "We do not have government by the majority. We have government by the majority of people who participate." Unfortunately, far too few of our citizens now participate in government. Often decisions are made by fewer than 20% of the electorate who chooses to vote. Did you know that Senator Gary Stevens of Kodiak plans to propose a bill that would require civics education courses as part of a graduation requirement? As he points out, strong state policies are needed to establish and reinforce the fact that preparation for civic life is equally as important as preparation for higher education and careers. In fact, preparation for active citizenship was the founding principles of public education in America from its beginning, and is a principle that must be reaffirmed each generation. I'm here tonight to speak in support of civics education in general, and particularly in support of We the People program currently taught here. Currently, Kids Voting seeks your support in recognizing the value of that program and extending civics education to all students. We need more than 17% turnout for local elections. We need graduates to fill vacancies on our committees and boards, to run for public office, to write letters to the editor, and organize rallies around relevant issues. Our hope is that students graduate with a sense of responsibility to our constitutional democracy and an understanding of the work it takes to ensure its stability.
Ms. Weiser, thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from the board? Yes, Ms. Marati?
Can you tell me how the board can support the kids voting initiatives and the We the People program?
Through your budget decisions. You know, it's all about money at this point, and we need more than a semester, a half a year of civics education in our school, and that's going to cost money. So
Thank
it's
you.
a budget decision.
Mr. Doran?
Thank you for coming tonight. Just a question on the civics education. Are you, I assume you're aware that civics is now a requirement for graduation. As you mentioned, the half semester of Lasker studies in government, but we have U.S. government and U.S. history, all of which are that, and that civics starts in kindergarten and continues all the way through recognizing their neighborhoods, their governments, communities, those types of things, and is hit specifically within the U.S. history parts, 5th grade, 8th grade, in high school, as well as the government classes.
I am. I'll try to be politically correct. I've been a teacher for 35 years, and when I look at this 4-page, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5-page outline for United States government and civics for high schools, for grades 11 and 12, 1 semester. That's a lot of stuff to be taught in 1 semester. And I am wholeheartedly in support of what you hope to be taught. But I'm not sure it can be taught in half a year. And I'm advocating for a full year of dedicated civics education for our high school students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next on the agenda, I'm sorry. I can see for the flowers. Ms. Smith?
I just wanted to say I'm actually a really big supporter of having both semesters be civics class and having it be year-long. I find that really important for especially seniors, as someone who's about to go into the world and become a voting citizen, that they really need that time to really ingest all of that information, really take it to heart, because as most kids know, a lot of information will just go like straight through in one ear, out the other. But so civics is something that really needs to last with you forever, because it's something that you want to use and you need to use. And I do agree with you about having it for 2 semesters.
Well said.
Thank you, Ms. Wiseman. And next we have on Nikki Eastman.
She's on Zoom, and I will promote you to talk, Ms. Eisman.
And I guess I have to ask if you can hear me.
Yes. Yes, just please state your name, spell your last name. You have 2 minutes. Thank you, Ms. Eastman.
Okay, Nikki Eisman, E-I-S-E-M-A-N, and it looks like you're seeing a picture of me and my grandson. Good evening. As we approach another budget cycle with its expected round of cuts and challenges, I'd like to take this time to ask the administration for a report on the steps our district took last year to try and close the budget gap. We closed 3 elementary schools, repurposed one of our newest elementary schools, made the decision to move 6th graders to middle school, eliminated the art center, eliminated elementary band and orchestra, and countless other cuts, reorganizations, and changes. How's everything worked out? What's worked? What remains a challenge? Last year, the administration proposed a new approach to providing band, orchestra, and choir instruction. Has that plan been implemented as proposed? Our middle schools were slated to open at 95%, and then we opened at higher than anticipated enrollment district-wide. How did that affect middle school operations? What's happening at the former Nordale Elementary? There was no specific plan this time last year, more of a build it and they will come concept. Did enrollment at best increase as hoped? How have the other programs adapted to their new settings? Parents at Joy and Nordale had concerns about the continuation of their students' IEPs. Were their concerns justified or laid to rest? I ask these questions as an advocate, not an enemy. The community deserves to know the answers, and now, more than halfway through the school year, the administration should be able to provide this information. I know that I'm not the only one that wants to know. A question on this topic came up at last Thursday's Borough Assembly meeting. I look forward to both a report before this body and a community perspective in the Newsminer. And finally, I understand that once again, the district has made recruitment and retention a legislative priority. This priority seems to be at direct odds with the approach the administration is taking with contract negotiations with both ESSA and FEA.
Thank you, Ms. Eastman. That is your time. Next on the testimony is Erin Janesco. Is she on Zoom?
She's not on Zoom.
Okay.
Oh.
Oh.
There she is.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay. My name is Erin Janoso. My last name is spelled Janoso, and I live in Fairbanks. And I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the educators and ESSA staff of the school district. The district admin negotiation team is at an impasse and moving to arbitration with both groups because they failed to reach their contract agreements. I do understand that hiring and firing and other staff matters are considered operations and therefore are said not to be typically board responsibilities. This premise is not entirely true, however, because this board has a supervisory role over Ms. Moline, who as the CSA is in the #1 leadership role of this district's admin, including over operations and staff matters. Because of your supervisory role over this employee, this board does in fact have responsibility for and power within this situation, and I'm here tonight to beg you to use it. Back before the holidays, I sat in one of the chairs back there in this room and listened to Ms. Moline describe how impasse, mediation, and arbitration are normal parts of contract negotiations, how it's fine that things have ended up where they are and we should all just relax. I could not disagree with her more. There is nothing normal or acceptable about any of this, and calling it so is just one more blow to the morale of this district's educators and staff, ESSA staff. Everyone understands we are in a major budget crunch. However, given the limited dollars available, I would have expected the district's negotiation team to have looked for every opportunity they could find to be generous in the things they are able to offer without costing this district a dime. Parking spots for itinerant teachers, for example, maintenance of standards clauses, respect, courtesy, cooperation, collaboration, and basic human decency. There are no dollar signs attached to any of these things, and yet they have at nearly every turn, being glaringly absent from every step of the district side of this contract negotiation process. Over this past year, I have sat in the testimony chair and one at the Borough Assembly advocating for Fairbanks Elementary band and orchestra programs, as well as the 6th through 12th band, orchestra, and choir programs, and heard over and over again that even if funding could be found, which perhaps it could have been, there weren't the teachers available to fill the positions. Fix this problem while we still have some left to save. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next, we have Rachel McKinney. If hopefully I didn't say that wrong.
Rachel McKinley,
Okay, you just
and it's McKinlay.
me.
And I am just going to add on to what Glenn Jackson was saying, but I am actually speaking about my son, CJ McKinley, and what his biology teacher had put up on the board and thought it was a joke. My email, which was sent to the principal of North Pole High School, which I don't believe was sent to any of you, but I am going to read it. It was sent to Michelle Spillane, and it says, "Hello, Michelle. My name is Rachel McKinley. I'm the mother of CJ McKinley, and I would like to let you know that CJ showed me a picture tonight that I was not happy to see. It was taken on the whiteboard of his biology classroom, Miss Beck's class. It was mentioned that it was a joke, and she'd been waiting all day to tell the kids. I don't see how this has anything to do with teaching my child anything about biology, especially when there are prostitutes involved. I think you know where I'm going with this. And yes, I'm referring to the email and comment that was sent by my boyfriend, Glenn Jackson. And I didn't appreciate that you called the police on him when all he did was make a comment. And that was referring to an email that he had sent to her before. And all it said was a snippy little comment at the bottom of that email. And she did, in fact, call the police on him because he showed up to the high school to drop something off for CJ. And I'll continue. And here you have one of your own teachers in your school teaching my child about prostitution. How can this be happening? I'm letting you know that in advance, Glenn is going to be writing to another email and to you, and it will be sent to the superintendent, governor, lieutenant governor, Alaska Department of Education board members, Fairbanks School Board members, and to a news channel of his choosing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony.
And if any of you would like to see what was on the board, I have a picture of it.
It's to the administrator, to you, or through the chair. Melissa and I weren't on the board at that time, and I feel if we're having this, that we would appreciate having that email forwarded to us so we understand what's going on.
You can just,
To Aaron.
Ms. Galloway, if you come forward.
Amy Galloway, last name Gallaway, and I live in Fairbanks. So I'm here to testify in support of quality civic education. I know you heard me say that this is the last year for the We the People program, and I hope that we can make it the last year for now and not the last year forever. And you can do that by prioritizing quality civic education programs like We the People, like Kids Voting, like iCivics, in our schools, not just in high school, but systematically taught and assessed K-12. I think that creating infrastructure and support rather than just saying it's in the curriculum is what is absolutely necessary. I would also say that when we look at schools, I see them a little bit like an ecosystem. So we're all interdependent from K-12 and all our different classes. And when something goes extinct, there's a disease in the system. And so when We the People, a national program, goes extinct, I would argue there's something wrong in our system. So I have a lot of research. I could quote framers, I could do all that, but ultimately I'm going to ask you to just listen to the students who've come before you in past years, the students who may speak tonight, and the students from Rhode Island who sued their state and their state school board of education because they were not getting a quality civic education program. And before it hit the Supreme Court, the state and the students settled, creating a more robust, more quality civics education program for their whole state. Thank you.
Okay, we have Miss Olivia Smith, and then we have Mr. Dorn,
Hi, thank you so much for
and
coming.
Miss Barnett.
I'm so sorry. Hi, thank you so much for coming, Miss Galloway. I really appreciate everything that you're doing. I was not aware that there even was a We the People in our district because my school doesn't do it that I'm aware of again. I was really interested in it. And why, could you tell me, why is it closing down?
Sure. Thank you. And the We the People kind of concept actually started at North Pole High School with former educator Pat Boehner. So We the People is a national program that is a nonpartisan civics program. It does take funding, and we lost the funding, but it also takes training, and it takes teachers who've been trained in the curriculum to then do it. And then it takes support from mentors and principals and curriculum directors to continue to train and support teachers in doing that. So right now, We the People is a choice across the state. And because of a loss of funding and a loss of training, and because there's no solid infrastructure support, no teachers no longer have the capability and the capacity to teach it.
Mr. Dorn.
So I'm going to build on that a little bit to understand. So We the People, which is not a Fairbanks program, it's a national program, that is still continuing.
Correct. It's just dead in the state of
In-
Alaska.
Okay, so, and that was my next thing, so international, that's still there. In the state of Alaska, there have been fewer and fewer groups participating. So am I correct that we're the only one, actually West Valley team was the only We the People in the state?
Yes. There were 5 teams about 6 years ago,
Right.
and that included Anchorage. For the last 3 years, West Valley has been the sole team.
Right, and so as a state, you can qualify to go to national. And the last part of this is, so we could, as a district, continue some support one way or another. We know that there's not funding from the state. There's the education. But ostensibly, even if it's a pause, we can get back to that piece. And well, we would have to have training and, you know, so a sponsor like yourself, you've dedicated a lot of time to it. So it's only and I guess my piece is, if we're the only one in the state, how does that impact going national?
Okay, that's a great question. So the first question, yes, you can revive it just as a school district. And in reality, I would volunteer my time. It wouldn't take a lot of money to revive it. It would take time, commitment, and infrastructure. So we could revive it in our school district, and we could solely have teams in Fairbanks who compete. But if we have a district, we build it, they could come. It doesn't mean, if we have a program, it doesn't mean that schools from other places can't. And then I would argue, right, the speaker before me spoke about Senator Stevens' bill. I would argue when you go down to Juneau that you could speak to him about how do we create a statewide support for that. But I think the last piece that I would want to like add to what you're saying in answer is that it's not just about the competition. I've been doing We the People hearings in my classroom for 15 years as final exams. And there's as much power in that as there is in the competition. And so even if there is no competition, there still needs to be a We the People program. And with me, when I go, it goes.
Thank you.
Ms. Barnett, and then Ms. Marotti.
I just want to say first off, thank you, Ms. Galloway, for having so much passion and care for this. I enjoyed meeting with you over the break and discussing this, and I just wanted to say that I look forward to supporting and advocating as hard as I can to get this back to us.
Thank you, Ms. Burnett.
Ms. Marati?
Thank you, Ms. Galloway. I have a couple questions, I think. So I don't recall seeing the funding at the board level for this, so I'm assuming I apologize, it's either state funded only or it was an activities fund. Do you have any idea of where the funding came from prior?
Sure. So it's never been funded by the school district. It was always funded by the National Center for Civic Education. And then Congress stopped funding that about 10 to 15 years ago, and that started the big decline. So states in which the states themselves or organizations in the state picked up the funding and training, those states thrived. And sometimes it's school districts like Connecticut pays for their whole program. In our state, nobody really did. So we the people, like I pay for it, or students pay for it, or it's free, or people here, people volunteer. So it doesn't have to cost money to do, it costs money to train and get curriculum materials.
Okay, final question, Mr. Dorn?
My last,
I'm sorry, did you have a follow-up, Ms. Marati? I didn't know, go right ahead.
Is there any way that you could email us through the chair, the cost, I guess it would be nationally, the training, for the cost of the training and curriculum?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Dorn?
my last question is, where does democracy reside?
In the hearts of men and women.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gallo, we appreciate it. I look forward to being able to come speak to your class.
Yes, open door anytime.
Next, we have Ms. Pirda Anderson. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Pirda Anderson, Anderson, and I live in Fairbanks. So, I'm a We the People student at West Valley, and I just want to give you a sense of what our class is like. We focus on collaboration and teamwork, and we have all different kinds of students. We have AP students, athletes, activists, etc. We're incredibly diverse, and it has been amazing for me to be in this class and work with everyone. Ms. Galloway's dedication to our civic education has shown me what kind of person I want to be in the world. We the People has taught me to be a more compassionate and thoughtful member of our community. It has taught me that my voice matters, and I deserve a seat at the table. Ms. Galloway continues to show me that I am capable of creating change in the world, and that with knowledge and strong values, I can save the Republic. The program has allowed me to participate in the School Board Candidate Forum, volunteer on local election night, and build connections with prominent community members. Civic education has given me crucial skills to carry on with me as I transition to my next stage of life. From a student perspective, I have observed a good amount of interest in the program from West Valley juniors, many of which have reached out to me to ask me to do this. To lose the We the People program would not only be a disservice to future students, but to our community as well. Abraham Lincoln once said, "The philosophy of the school in one generation will be the philosophy of the government in the next." I implore you to consider this as you examine our civic education. One semester of civic education is not enough. We deserve more as we move into this next stage of life. We need to be taught to be lifetime voters, and we need to be taught to make decisions with education. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Oh, Ms. Barnett?
That was amazing.
Thank you.
Made me a little emotional. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Next, we have Cameron Pearson, or
Hello, I'm Cameron Payson, P-A-I-S-O-N. I live in Fairbanks. I'm a student at West Valley, and I will be testifying to the cause of continuing the We the People program. I approach you, the professionals, as a student not with the best grades, and a student who honestly never scores the highest, and more honestly, never saw himself as the right man to approach you, the lawmakers, the lawmakers, the professionals, the people who can actually make a difference. But I approach you nonetheless, because I, a student who isn't many things, am a student who has been deeply and personally affected by this program. I am a student who cares about the government because of this program. I am a student who cares about our town because of this program. I am a student who cares about my school because of this program. I am a student who cares about something bigger than myself because of this program. I am a student who learned firsthand that none of you are even professionals. You're just people that care about things like I do. I am a student who learned how easy it is to make a difference, to run for a position, to petition for something, to get a vote, to change a mind, to save a life, to keep a program running so that students like me can learn this like I did. And in the future, if I still care, which I promise I will, I'll become a teacher and fill Miss Galloway's shoes. I'll become one of you and fill your shoes. If I become president, I'll fight tooth and nail to keep this program alive in this state, because I am a student who cares deeply about this program. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
I just want to say thank you so much for coming. I haven't really seen that many students here since I've joined the board, and it's so nice to see both you and, I'm so sorry, I forgot your name, come to the board tonight and testify on something that you feel so passionate about, that I feel so passionate about as well. And I really encourage not just you to move forward with stuff like this, but all students. And I am so proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Mr. Doran?
Thank you. I've got two questions. One is in terms of, have you as students thought to approach your student council and the administration at your school to make sure that this is part of the extracurricular offerings, which it would fall under?
Yeah, well, maybe not as a class. I'm sure specific students have done that. I haven't. My part is getting up here in front of you guys and bringing it up, making you guys feel a little more sympathetic towards it. Besides that, I don't know.
Okay, I'm just going to encourage that might be one of the avenues to go. And my next question is really to you and to Ms. Anderson, because I missed right away asking, but where does democracy reside?
I think I failed this part on the test. In the hearts of men and women.
Okay, and I heard the echo from the back too, so. But I think that's a really important thing. That's what you model actually as students coming here and speaking to us, as previous students have done over the years. You model the civics that we are trying to promote within schools. Can we do better? Absolutely. Do we want to provide as many opportunities for students to stand out? Absolutely. So thank you for answering those questions and for coming forward tonight.
Thank you.
We have a question from Ms. Hardy.
Yeah, first, you and Ms. Anderson did brilliantly. Thank you for coming. I did want a clarifying question because I think I'm confused. Was this offered as a class that you earned credit for, or was this something as a sport, like extracurricular activity?
It's a class we get credit for.
That's what I thought.
Ms. Smith?
Just really quick, if you're staying till the end of the meeting, I would love to talk to you about actually some really great programs that could really help you with this. Or honestly, I could come out and talk to you real quick if you would like. Yeah.
I'll stay here until the end.
And finally, for myself, I want to thank you for coming. Every time Ms. Galloway brings students before this board, they're always well-spoken, they're very focused, and they're very passionate about what they are accomplishing. As we all ran for office and when we had to do the West Valley candidate forum, that was all made us pause, think, try to have our act together before we came before you, because we realize that you're our future, and we realize the importance and the impact. Part of what I want to come and talk to Ms. Galloway in the class about. So we'll be talking later, but I appreciate you coming forward tonight, students. Thank you.
Thank you.
And is there anyone else out in the public that would like to come testify? Please come forward, state your name, spell your last name. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Wendy Demers, Demers. I'm from Fairbanks. Thank you. I have come to speak tonight about the changing morale I've experienced as a teacher in this district. I've been teaching in this district for 21 years. I've been through many contract negotiations. I've been pink slipped my first 3 years as a teacher, not knowing if I would have a job in the fall. I remember the need to go out and get teaching experience for a couple of years before I could even hope to get hired here. Now our district is handing out emergency certification to anyone willing to teach. As a professional educator, I understand that this is an emergency temporary fix for a severe shortage of educators applying for jobs. The problem is that when districts hand out emergency certification to people with absolutely no teaching experience or training, it degrades our profession and provides a subpar education for our students. It is basically communicating to all of the certified educators that you believe that anyone can do what we do. This is simply not true. We hear that we are respected, but those words feel empty and lack substance when we can't even negotiate a decent contract with well-deserved and needed raises. Now we are sending contracts to only the tenured teachers that must be signed within 30 days, with a threat that if we don't sign, we will not be entitled to continued district employment in the subsequent school year. And if we sign and then decide in June to resign, may be reported to the Professional Teaching Practices Commission for a breach of contract. Although it is legal to send out these contracts anytime after January 1st, it isn't necessary, and it causes more stress and frustration all while we are working under an expired contract, waiting on mediation and an administration team that continually walked away from negotiation table. We need to do better.
Thank you, Wendy, for your testimony.
Thank you.
Okay, I believe testimony is closed.
My name is Flora Roddy, R-O-D-D-Y. I live in Fairbanks. I am a member of the Education Support Staff Association. We also have been running with no contracts since the beginning of this year, July 1st. I want to go off of Wendy's respect. Respect. When you spell respect, it starts with an R, and then you have an ESP, and that's what we are. Education support professionals. And it's not personnel, it's not people, it's not person, it is professional. We are professionals, we are educators. Whether we are a paraprofessional in the classroom of special education, a lunch lady, which was one of my favorite jobs. We go all the way from, we used to have a receptionist in this building who was like a grade 1 or 2. Our male person used to be a grade 2, I believe. And then we go all the way up and include the trades, electricians, nurses, computer techno geeks, computer techs, we run the gamut. We run the schools. The support staff are the first people that the students see when they enter a school. And they are sometimes the last people that the students see when they leave the school. Respect. We all want and deserve respect.
Thank you, Ms. Roddy, for your testimony. Okay, I think that's all the public testimony for tonight. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the Borough Assembly Report. Engage with students, family, and community to support student success. Savannah Fletcher, our Borough Assembly, will provide a report. Is she on Zoom?
I do not see her, President Sanderson.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to my report, the President's report. And mine is very short. I spent the month of December, we had our training, our board training with the Student Outcome Focused Governance Coaching with Alicia Hyde. I spent the time looking at documents and reading and just getting some focus on the holidays and what we all have facing us. I was able to share with NAACP, which I'll be doing again at the end of this month, and still been sharing information about our North Star College and our CTE programs that we have in our district. I was able to meet with the borough mayor, Mayor Bryce. We had a great conversation, and looking forward to working with him as we move forward into our budget time. I think that's it. I'll have more next month. Next, we'll hear from, unless anyone has questions, I don't think everybody has questions, thanks. Next, we'll hear from our Chief School Administrator, Ms. Moline.
Thank you, President Sanderson. So I'd like to begin my report with a quick transportation update. Durham is hiring van drivers. And if you would like to be a van driver, you need to call Durham and speak with Sammy, and he will get you started in the process. We're reaching out to those individuals who expressed an interest, those that work for the district, an interest earlier in driving vans, and we'll be directing them on how they can make application for that job. So also concerning the funding from the borough for transportation, there was a little bit of a delay in the borough side, but I think we're ready to start dispersing those funds in the next few weeks. So that'll be happening for those drivers that qualify and meet the parameters of the ordinance. I'd also like to address just a few of the things that were mentioned earlier in public comment about the success of the measures that the district took last year in some of our budget alignment. First of all, I'm very proud of the district and the work that we've done towards our best homeschool. Enrollment, I just spoke with the principal today. Enrollment's up to about 850 students. Last year we were running right about 740. So that school is growing, and they do use the facility. There's regular classes held there in the gym, and their PE classes, and parents take advantage of the space in that way. Also, again, as the board knows, SMART students meet there, and SMART students have acknowledged how much more it means to be in a setting like that than in a setting like here at the district office. So that's been quite successful. SPED students continue to receive their services, even with the challenges of SPED staff. Meetings are still happening. Students are receiving their services, both at the elementary and at the middle school level. Middle school principals have, in conversation with them, are finding the new model quite successful. There was naturally some adjustments at the beginning of the year, some need to make some new ways of being in a building, but they're finding it very successful. And in conversation with elementary school principals, the K-5 model is working very nice for them. They're able to do things that they've always done in a most excellent way, I think, as is exampled by Denali Elementary's award for closing the achievement gap. So the consolidation of Anderson Crawford has been, I think, challenging for the student body and for the teachers and for the parents. However, it is settling into a new routine, and they're beginning to find their feet and be able to operate quite well in that environment. So I would say I would give kudos to the board for the tough decisions that were made last year, and that they were the right decisions at the right time for our students in our district. So that's a little bit of an update on some of the decisions that were made last year concerning how we deliver education and how we fund children instead of buildings. I would also like to just address our strategic plan goal of student success. Fairbanks continues to be recognized as a place of excellence, as is demonstrated by one of our students, Teslyn Brannon, along with her mother, Tori Brannon, did a presentation on the 10-year pile driver slew study. They gave a presentation at the American Geophysical Union Conference. That's a conference of 2,300 people from around the world, and they were able to present on the project that they did, and it was a 10-year project, so it was over time. Teslyn talked about the results of the project, and her mom talked about leading a long-term research project as a whole school. So that's some of our former staff and students. Also, we had two professionals in our district were recognized for their excellence in the area of CTE, which is also one of our goals in the district. Andrea Wade received the State Career Guidance Award at the CTE conference, and our Joni Simpson received the CTE Leadership Award, and that's for their leadership in the state and in the district. So once again, staff, professionals in our district are being recognized for the excellent work that they do here. And finally, I just would like to acknowledge the Fairbanks Junior ROTC program. Again, they showed up and they excelled. All four of our programs attended the competition in Eagle River. Eielson, varsity color guard, took away third place out of 13 schools. North Pole High first year color guard, third place. First year unarmed regulation, third place. Armed exhibition solo, first place. Armed exhibition dual, first place. Armed exhibition quad, first place, all from North Pole High. And Lathrop unarmed drill varsity, first place. Armed exhibition solo, second place at Lathrop, and armed exhibition dual, third place. So those are just a few of the successes that are happening in our district, not only with our students, but with the professionals that represent us around the state. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Moline. If I could just, I was sitting here and I'm sort of stunned thinking of what just took place in our boardroom, but I failed, and I apologize for not speaking about the superintendent search and where we are on that, because as a listening community and stakeholders, you've participated, and we are on point at this time. Our applications, about 10 or so completed applications. 21 applications completed. Our board will be able to view those documents and the videos. And I met with Mr. Doran so that we could finalize some other strategic things that we wanted to take place around the superintendent search. So I just wanted to amend that and share that with the listening audience and with our board. So thank you. Yes.
Ms. Anderson, as president, do you want me to just highlight the dates? that
Yes,
we-
go ahead.
Okay, so for, most of these are known to the board, but for the public, next Tuesday, January 24th, we'll meet with Ray and Associates to review the top candidates out of all those applicants and to select sort of semifinalists. On January 26th, Thursday, we'll do preliminary interviews to narrow that field from semifinalists to finalists. On Tuesday, January 31, we'll actually meet to finish the results of those preliminary considerations and select the top finalists. Those will then be publicly announced at that time for the finalists. And then we're projecting having the finalists come to visit our community February 16th, 17th, and 18th. That's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So more details will come out on that, but gives you an idea of the timeline that we're working on.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. Next on our agenda.
Ms.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Moretti.
You mentioned that you and Mr. Doran met to finalize other strategic plans regarding the search. Can you share with the board what those were?
It's just finalizing some details. Details of once our candidates are on site. And I will make that known as soon as we have all that in place. Because I haven't had conversation with some people that I need to have conversation with, and then I'll share with the board.
Thanks.
Thank you. Oh, next on our agenda is new business item. The student outcome focused government board coaching. Alicia Hyde with SUSE Counseling and Legal Services, LLC, has offered her service to do some board coaching over the next 2 years. Did I get a motion?
Move to approve commitment to actively participate in the Student Outcomes Focused Governance Board Coaching with Alicia Hield with SISU Consulting and Legal Services, LLC.
Second.
Ms. Poland, got to get the vote?
Wait a minute.
I'm sorry, what?
Was
We have a motion.
right. Would you
And
want
it
to
was
go
approved?
discussion first
Oh,
to the board,
I'm
then
sorry.
public, and then back
Thank
to
you,
the board?
Mr. Doran. Are there any public comments concerning this new business item? Are there any board comments? Ms. Smith, Ms. Hardy, Mr. Doran.
Thank you. I support this, and I will be voting yes. I have to admit, I was a frowny face on going to this training. I felt that it was in response to something that I asked for and that I wasn't getting what I wanted out of that. And that's true. It was, I think, not what I asked for, but still turned out to be engaging for our board, and I personally preferred the style of the person that administered the training. And I really, when I joined this board, I wanted student
outcomes-focused governance. And I feel that almost 3 years I've been on this board, we have been quite distracted from student-focused governance, and I think that this will really help us stay on track with that, and that it's something that I look forward to. So I'll be voting yes.
Ms. Hardy?
And the representative is available via Zoom to ask this question to through the chair?
Yes, she is.
Okay. So I have 2 questions, and I can start with the first. Because what are the specific terms of the agreement outlining what would constitute a failure on the board's part that would incur a financial obligation? Because if we're entering into something we're voting, we need to know the monetary numbers. That wasn't provided to us in the work session, and I can't vote to approve either way without knowing what that is. And I would prefer, since it is a monetary obligation, even if it's being volunteered, that we have those terms in writing and also what the financial obligation would be if we failed to meet those terms.
So that's a question to Ms. Hyde. Ms. Hyde, if you would answer.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, I agree with Ms. Hardy. I don't think you should vote on contracts you don't have the terms of. So tonight I was expecting a non-action item discussion. My recommended practice is that you put things on your agenda and you discuss them publicly, and then you have time for you and your public to have, thought about it. I think it would be pretty unlikely for the public to have any comment on this if they didn't have any previous knowledge about it or anything like that. But as for the details, which I can give a contract to your board chair for your next board meeting for your review. Typically what we do, and I typically work with the Council of Great City Schools. This is just a one-time opportunity for this board on a volunteer basis. But typically I have a flat fee, and then it's below market rate. And then if they don't meet those obligations of not doing exactly what I say, that's not the obligation. The obligation is to be engaged in the work. It's pretty general and vague and generous, I would say. The goal is to support your board in focusing on your community's vision and values for improving student outcomes. My job is accountability for you to do the things you want to do for your students. The instances that would trigger that, if your board stopped meeting with me monthly on Zoom, that could trigger it. That 1 or 2 of you kind of is like, I'm not really that interested in this, or you get kind of pushed back a lot. Pushback is always fine, right? There's no having to agree with everything. But we do use the framework. So that framework I gave you during our December training, that manual, there's a board self-evaluation, and you'll see, remember, like 4 columns for each area. And so you'll be monitoring your progress. So the expected effort on your part will be moving toward progress, moving toward improvement. There's some flexibility on what you want to do, when you want to do it. I gave you a draft implementation timeline, but you can move things around. Probably want to review it with your new superintendent and see what works best for that person and their team. Let's see what was without the details. So my recommendation would be to not vote tonight and to table it until your next board. I mean, you can just withdraw the motion and have it as a non-action item discussion, but, or vote to table it to the next meeting. And then if you're going to vote on something, make sure you have it to your board within your board's policy on when you share your, contracts or whatever information you share with your agenda items. Does that answer your question, Ms. Hardy?
Oh, yes, that does. Can I make a motion?
You had a follow-up?
Can I make a motion then?
I can keep talking about it now and then make it at the end. It doesn't matter.
If you, do you have a follow-up? Okay. And are there any additional questions? Mr. Dorn?
Thank you. And would you remind me, is it Hildy? How do you pronounce your last name? Hildy, okay, that's right. I have 2.5 questions because I'm going to build off Ms. Hardy's question. So you would present, there would be a cost if we don't complete the 2 years.
Correct.
Okay, and you will provide us information on what that cost would be.
Most of the time our boards complete the work, but in the few instances where they haven't, the cost is generally, I'd say, billed around $10,000 to $15,000. That's still a discount from the hourly rate. Nobody's looking to, needlessly punish people, but the idea is for it to be an incentive to do the work.
Right. Well, and I do want to acknowledge the very, very generous offer that you've made to us to do the training for free, though we're incurring a certain obligation as we go through it. And that's the commitment we would be making, is to finish, which we want to do. But things can also happen, your schedule, boards, we have elections and things of that sort. So once we get that information, that will be very helpful. And I think your recommendation or suggestion to us that we postpone or table, and it's already been indicated by another board member to do that, but after we have some discussion here. The second question I had was that there are a number of aspects of this that involve both the board proper and the superintendent. Okay, we will have a new superintendent. How do you see, in terms of moving forward with that, to keep an appropriate balance between that working partnership, the superintendent and the board?
I think you're in a pretty unique situation where you haven't hired your new superintendent. If I were the superintendent applying for your job, I would want to know what the board's plan is. So if you are going to do this work, I would want you to commit to it beforehand so that that superintendent can say, is this something I want to be a part of or not? And they're coming in with, a clear picture of what this board's direction is for at least the next 2 years. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity to make this determination before you hire a superintendent. But lots of people make this, you can do it with your superintendent as well. So that happens most of the time. I think you mentioned something about if a board changes over. One of the conditions, it's not normally a condition when I'm paid, but a condition for your board is it has to be unanimous approval. So all of you have to support the work. That does mitigate the risk if you have new board members coming on that they are not supporting the work, reduces the odds of that not being a majority. Most importantly, I'm going to give my time and I want unanimous support for it if that's how I'm going to volunteer my time. But you'll also be doing pre-boarding. So any future board members would have training in student outcomes focused governance prior to joining the board. For your superintendent, there are a lot of components that involve your superintendent. Boards doing things without taking into account your superintendent's role and their work product is not going to result in a high quality outcome for your students. So when we start with goals, which is the first thing, your board would be revising or identifying SMART goals, which we went through at your last training. You would do that in collaboration with your superintendent, they'd be doing a root cause analysis, you'd be doing community engagement, and really refining that to make sure your community knows what your board is committed to doing for your students, reflective of your community's values and vision.
May I continue?
You have a follow-up for clarification?
It's a clarification question.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Doran.
Okay. Okay, looking at the outline, and we don't have the details of the different components, but looking at the outline, which I think is primarily pretty good, but being familiar with a lot of types of trainings and manuals, my question is, I view this as not prescriptive, but that it provides a context, contextual application, if you want, that offers flexibility and adaptability to adjust things appropriate to Fairbanks. And let me pause there and see whether that's making sense to you, my question and what your response is.
Well, my first thought is that it is prescriptive to the extent that this is your board self-evaluation components. So doing these steps is how we monitor whether your board is doing the things your board is committed to doing. If there is something in it that your board is like, we don't want to do this one thing, you know, we would just coach through that, right? I don't know what that is that would come up. I'll say the most common pushback, people don't like policy revision. Lots of times the boards I coach don't take the policy revisions that my team recommend. That doesn't mean, you know, we would quit or something like that. So that's probably the most common one. People like to hold on to their management policies a whole lot. Everything else usually makes your job a lot easier. That does too. But trying to think what, let's see. But yeah, these are just reflective behaviors of school boards in high performing districts. So it's evidence-based. It's not, well, maybe if you do a little bit of this, it's this package is what supports strong governance in a school district. So there might be one or two that you're pushing down the road or something like that, but the expectation is that you're doing this work. I don't know if that's exactly what you're trying, your question is though.
Okay, well, I think we're getting closer. Context and techniques are one thing. The actual application is another. And the way I work it out in my mind is that sometimes we talk about curricular approaches and doing them with fidelity, even some that I've seen that go word for word. But we do know that doesn't work for every student and every classroom, and you need to adjust and adapt. You build upon the concepts and the techniques, but you're making their application. And I think that's important. This is pretty much a national type of training, but we have to make it work for Fairbanks. And that our responsibility, and I'm speaking for myself, would be to say, how do I take this training, following it, understanding it, what it offers, but making it work for Fairbanks. And that's where I see it as not prescriptive, but it is providing a solid base of an approach and be able that we can build on that with flexibility and adaptability. Does that make sense?
I think you actually have it right on the head. The whole objective is to make it what Fairbanks needs for Fairbanks, because every community is so different. So it is a framework, not a prescription, in that this is what you do. You all are equipped to know what your community wants for their school district, or to find that out through a community engagement process. That's going to be very different than any other community. Your community engagement processes are going to look different than in other states because of how your community likes to interact or be communicated with, or all of those different components that make Fairbanks unique, keeping all decision-making local to this board, but truly empowering this board to effectively represent the vision and values of your community.
Okay, and I have two other questions, but let me pause. There might be others.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, thanks, Ms. Hildy. When we talked about new members coming on, they are elected, whether we pre-board or not. They're elected, they'll have their own decisions to make. If we did not have an unanimous board decision to continue, or their buy-in to that, that ended, you're saying that would end the contract and we would pay up to that point. Is that correct?
Well, I can see that working two ways, because this happens in all of our boards that I coach. There's always new members coming on. Typically, they're supportive. It's hard to say I don't want children to improve their student outcomes. But sometimes it comes on and I don't have at that point a unanimous. I can work with boards where it's like 5 of 7. We can still do a lot of really good work toward improving student outcomes when there's a majority. The goal is not to just write anybody off ever, of course. Let's see, I thought I made a note about this. 1 second here. I don't want to forget. Yeah. Oh, so if that new board though chose, or maybe you guys are like, this lady is out there, I don't want to do this stuff anymore. You have a choice to cancel it and then you pay the fee. So that new board, if they were all elected, there's always multi-year contracts in districts. So this is just one way of being able to end the contract. You could say, we don't want to do that anymore. And the clause activated would be that you pay, you actually have to pay for the work you received. And that's a choice a future board can make.
I want to put myself in the thing. Okay, so thank you, Alicia. So I don't want to speak for the two newest members that we have on our board, but I know that they availed themselves to our meetings and to conversations around our community to strengthen their platform and to have a clearer understanding. This could also be something that we could offer to new board members and say, as a process of familiarizing themselves with how we do business, what's expected of them, and how they can be supported in their new role. Is that correct?
Absolutely. The goal that we're working toward is that your new board members are able to meaningfully participate in your first board meeting. I can say, as somebody who once had a first board meeting, that is not the norm, right? It feels pretty terrible, the first board meeting. The goal is for that to not be the case, that your board members are not only prepped prior to the election, and also your community. It's a community engagement opportunity as well. But that by that first board meeting, they know what to expect and how to engage in the meeting effectively.
Ms. Hardy? And then Mrs. Smith.
I know Troya has talked about the amazing president's book that Anchorage has developed. Would we get would we be able to develop something onboarding like that for the role of president or for new board members out of this process?
Absolutely. You definitely recommend building an onboarding process, including pre-boarding though. We don't say just wait till they show up, start it before, but definitely a onboarding as new members join the board. I, in fact, remember my first year being pretty confused. Doesn't go away after the first meeting.
Ms. Smith?
That's me, right? Okay, just checking. Okay, so I want to speak to two things. One is about tabling this to another day. If Ms. Hildy presents us with $1, does that change your vote? And I don't like to waste time, and we will most likely be wasting time. If you can say, if she presents us with a $100,000 bill, I'm going to change my mind. Okay, me too. But she just said that's not what it's going to be. So in regards to the future motion of tabling this, I would ask the board members to consider the wasting of time. And also, the question before us is, do we want to proceed with a systematic improvement of the operation of our school board for student outcome focused governance? That's the only question that we have. You know, a hyper focus on what if we have to pay for it. I would put forward that we're about to pay probably not an insignificant amount of money for AASB to come here for 2 days to give us some training that is not going to produce an overall improvement to the function of our board. And it's something that I'm quite interested in doing, and I'd like to just have it on the table today. If we don't have unanimous support or even anywhere near unanimous support, why not just know that today? So I would speak against a future tabling of this motion and ask for the consideration that we spend money on training for our board that doesn't do a tenth of what is promised through this training. And frankly, I thought that I saw some improvement in our communication with each other and our general understanding of what our purpose here is just from our one day that we spent together with this type of training. So once again, I'm ready to proceed with the vote today, and I would support the training.
Ms. Hardy?
I will say I am all for student outcome focused governance. I think that, we'd be hard pressed to have anyone on the board say that that's not why we're on. That's like part of our mission statement. I will say, though, I don't sign contracts I haven't read, and I won't obligate our district to sign a contract we haven't read. And I think our the representative supports that. That's just being fiscally responsible and understanding it and being able to read through it. I am one of those people who reads through all the things before I sign my name on the line, and voting is, in sense, us signing a contract with Ms. Hildy. The other part is that she brought up, which is I think a very important part of student-focused governance and also our commitment to our community, is we spent a lot of time in this boardroom doing a work session, but I know because I used to sit out there, I didn't always watch the work sessions, especially not ones that last 7 hours. So for a lot of people, this is the very first time they're aware that any of this is happening. And it is a disservice to our public, the listening audience, to not have the opportunity to go back, to look at this contract that we're going to sign, which should be a part of our next agenda, and properly notice that thing. That's one of the platforms I ran on, that I wanted transparency, that I wanted everybody to feel like we were above board and we were making decisions thoughtfully. The other thing when I sat in those chairs was feeling like we were rushing before we had a plan. I am not somebody who's trying to stall. I am somebody who is careful and deliberate and wants to make sure the decisions I'm making are made in the best interest of students. And to do that, I would like to see written out a contract that I can spend time in digesting and be able to have the public talk about it.
Ms. Burnett?
I would also like to go along with what Ms. Hardy said. I don't feel it's a waste of time. I feel that it is a knowledge gaining opportunity. I also don't sign things I've never looked at or read or don't understand, and I would like to know exactly what we're getting ourselves into, considering there is an amount of about $10,000 to $15,000 that we can be on the hook for, depending on if we have unanimous decision, depending on new board members next year. And so I just want to make sure that we're well aware of what we're stepping into and what everything includes before we dot our I's and cross our T's and say that we're good with it. So I would respectfully, I would like to also table this so that we have a full understanding.
Ms. Smith?
Though I do agree with the fact that most people, again, have already made up their decisions on how they would vote for this with or without the dollar amount. I do agree with the fact that you guys should look at the contract and it should be open to the public, because you don't want to sign up for something that you don't know 100% of what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dorn?
Comment and then a question. That as I came in to look at this, I had 3 major questions that were very significant, depending on those answers, as to whether I would support this moving ahead right away or not. More information. One of those was the cost. A very generous offer that an opportunity ahead of us. But if there is a dollar amount, we have to factor that into our budget. If it was $100,000, I would say, no, we can't make that commitment. There's no way. Hearing that it might be 10 or 15, and we'll get that clarification, that's a whole different story. This is a bigger difference than a 2-day training to a 2-year training. So I don't necessarily equate those two things there. The other thing that is important is that, and this is going to come to a question, Ms. Hildy, for you. I am concerned because as a board, we work very closely in partnership with the superintendent. And this is it's not just a board training. We have different roles, but there's a real important coordination. And I think that these will cross over. We're setting agendas. Part of this training is how we do that and how we do it in a way that keeps student focused. We try to do that and minimize other things that come before us that still need to be done, but to keep that focus on students. And this training can be very good for us to do that. But that's working together because those agendas are done, superintendent and board president, board. So my question to you, Ms. Ali, is in terms of timeline, there's a sense of if we move to table of postpone to time specific, first I was thinking, well, February 7th would be our next meeting, gives us time for you to send that information to answer our questions specifically, for us to consider them and move ahead, to make our decision on it. It's a furthering of our conversation from December with you. But then I'm thinking it is really important for the superintendent coming in to, if you want, weigh in, know what they're getting into. We can give that indication. So time-wise, maybe March 7th. We can factor in that 10 or 15 into our budget discussions as we go forward. We're not done with the budget, but we're moving ahead with that. The other is to, we will have selected our superintendent, hopefully, that's the plan, and that person can be part of that final decision so they can support us in this training as we support that person. So does that March, does a March date become problematic? I really appreciate your saying tonight, I don't think you should make the decision tonight. And then there is also two parts. There's the commitment to do it, and then we really do the contract, if you want, and make sure we're all on the same footing. But could you address that timeline?
Sure. I don't have a problem with March 7th. In the contract, I'll just put in a flat fee and then you guys don't have to feel stressed. I'm not engaging in this work unless I'm sure you're going to do it for 2 years. I wouldn't invest my time and my considerable effort and volunteers I pull in to support my work unless I'm actually really convinced that you all want to do this work. So I'm not stressed over, I can just put a flat fee in and then you guys can not, have that piece not be a variable to wonder about. I think there's two ways to do it, to have your new superintendent weigh in or to direct your new superintendent what your expectations are. Either way, that is the board's job to direct your superintendent on the work to do. You do it in partnership with your superintendent, of course. They are the educational expert responsible for managing your district and achieving those outcomes. But it works in either way, whether you, we have other boards that do this, where they're in an interim, they start the work and they hire the superintendent in the middle. I wouldn't say that is the major impetus to getting work done. It's whether the board chooses to do the work that they commit to doing or not. But I don't have a problem with March 7th. Anything further than that, I'm gonna start taking on other work and my schedule will fill up, but I don't have a problem waiting till March 7th or February 6th, 7th, whatever you said, either of those.
Okay, thank you for that response. And with that, And I appreciate what Mrs. Smith's comments were, that as we finish our conversation tonight on this and decide what action we're going to take, that we want to keep in mind, is it worth our time and worth Ms. Hildy's time to get us this, very more specific information upon which to make a longer term decision. But before I make a motion, or somebody else does, I see a hand come up.
Ms. Moretti, then I'll put myself in the queue.
Thank you. I support Ms. Hildy's, Ms. Hardy's, Ms. Burnett's, Ms. Smith's suggestion to table this motion tonight. As we haven't seen the contract. I don't support obligating future boards to a monetary transaction as vague as this. And at the potential price of 10 to 15,000, I think we should go through an RFP process. I'd be interested in seeing what other organizations could provide for this type of consulting.
To be sure, my fee is $0, but I will not be participating in an RFP process.
So I think I'm on the schedule to speak. So I'm just going to come from the support that I need and that the board said that they would give me to move forward to do the work that we have committed to do. As I looked over this proposal, what it spoke to me was that we got our act together and we started to work as a focused board. With the budget, the different things that come before us. And we have all had questions in the past. Our superintendent, the evaluation form that we used, we weren't happy with it. We wanted to change it. We didn't know quite about how to go about it. We looked at some different things and no decision was made about that. So to have a person that can coach us through this, to put some things in place that we have all put voice to, our policies, the agenda, working with our superintendent, strengthening our community relationships. These are the work of the board. This is what we have committed. This is what we ran to do. And to have it to be student-focused, it really put a different perspective on it when I went through this training with Alicia. For me, being responsible for my duties, looking and being prepared, all of those things were game changers. And we will continue to do different board trainings. This one is a long-term, productive outcome that we can participate in. And once these questions, forced fees and things like that are put to rest. Again, the commitment was for us to participate and for her to coach. As long as we were doing the work, I saw that that was a win-win in the climate of working relationships and things that we have coming in front of us, to have that as an asset to us to draw upon, to have knowledge, and especially for myself, for coaching. When I look at our policies and I look at my president's duty, I mean, 4 bullet points just doesn't get it. And to be able to have networking of other people who have gone through her coaching and came out with strength and a good solid foundation, that's what I wanted to do. And if you remember when I took the seat, I said I would be the most reluctant leader sitting in this seat. But I totally plan on being the most productive leader and making outcome and student changes and focusing so that when I walk away from this leadership role, I will have grown, I will have knowledge, and I will put things in place that have made a difference in our community. So I just want to put that out there and share that with the board. Mr. Dorn.
Being mindful and appreciative of the leadership of Ms. Sanderson in initiating this, of Ms. Hildy for taking time to work with us in December and to make this proposal to us is greatly appreciated. And the time in December by the whole board for all the members that day and the thoughtfulness that went into that. I'm going to move to postpone this action item until our March 7th meeting. n- n- you can work to amend it if it gets a second, but I have.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded.
Can I
And Mr. Dorn, you want to speak to it?
Yeah, why I'm doing March 7th is because I think this is very valuable training, and I think it's a really good opportunity for us. But I do think that it is really important that we can give this full consideration. We will have our early budget discussions. We will have our selection of a superintendent who is really going to be a significant partner in this. And we can go into that, letting that person know this is what we're considering doing, and they may say, oh, wow, that makes you an attractive board. That can be one of the things there. They can be knowledgeable of it, aware of it, that this is something, if we move ahead, where once they start in July 1, they're going to be part of. But that, we are not two separate bodies. We're superintendent and the board. We work together. So I think it's best to have that all done and everyone's aware right from the start. So that's why I'm saying March 7th is our most feasible date to have both those, the budget discussions well underway and superintendent selection made so we can really plan accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Dorn. Ms. Burnett?
I would like to move to actually amend it to February 7th with respect to Mr. Doran and his ideas, and I understand where he's going with it. We have a lot on our table that's happening, and while I am on the side of I do want to take some time and look over this contract and such, I don't think that we should be moving it to March. 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks to fully understand it, check the contract out, and then meet again with Ms. Hildy should be efficient for us, and then we can move into our budget process. I believe that any superintendent that we do hire on board is going to be willing and ready to work with the present board that we have.
I'm going to second Melissa's motion since it needs a second.
Okay. You to have the vote, Ms. Pauling?
Yes, thank you. Colonel Surrey?
Hey, team up. I just want to make sure I know what I'm voting on here. Is it to postpone?
Yes, correct. We're moved to amend the motion that was on the floor to postpone to February 2nd. 7th, excuse me.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Marati?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Doran?
No.
Thank you. Mrs. Burnett?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
No. Right. It amended the motion to postpone. So.
Okay, go ahead, Ms.
Out of respect, I think, for Miss Hildy's time and that she's completely volunteering all of this, I think that we do have enough time by February 7th to have looked over the contract, assuming it comes to us pretty quickly, which it sounds like it will. And the public is now aware of what we're voting on and what it means. So those things were my main concerns. And I will say I like the idea of us having made a decision one way or another before we make an offer to a superintendent, because we are the board that is saying this is how we want to guide you, and that will influence whether or not they want to join us. And for better or for worse, this is the board that they're coming on to. And so if we say unanimously this is what we want to do, then I would expect them to understand that. And there's good pieces. I think we have things to discuss, but I think we could definitely use a student outcome focused government.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hilda, did you have any closing comments?
Nope, you're all just welcome to email me or call anytime, and we can go over the implementation timeline or anything in the manual. Yeah, February 7th is fine for me for notice, and I'll get you a contract this week. I'll send it to Troya and Carm.
All right,
and
thank you.
superintendent.
Thank you for your time. Okay. Ms. Pollock, could we have, call for the vote, please, on the motion to postpone to February 7th?
Mrs. Burnett,
Yes.
Mr. Doran,
No.
Ms. Marati,
No.
Mrs. Hardy,
Yes.
Mrs. Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Smith,
Yes.
thank you. And Colonel Surrey,
Yes.
thank you. Motion carried. Ms. Sanderson,
Yes.
Ms. Anderson. I apologize.
right.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next, next on our agenda is the annual audit report. The goals and objective: communicate and engagement, ensure students, staff, family, and community are informed, connected, and engaged with the district. The school district fiscal year 2021-2022 physical statement audit is complete. Nico Herbert, Director of Accounting Services, along with Brian Kupek with Ottoman Rogers and Company, will provide a brief overview of the audit. Go ahead, Ms. Nico.
Ms. Poland, can you make me a Zoom presenter so I can share my slides with the public? Yes.
Did that work for you, Ms. Hebert?
Good evening. Thank you, guys. My name's Nicole Herbert. I go by Nico. I'm the Director of Accounting Services, and I am here with Brian with Altman Rogers and Company to present the annual comprehensive financial report for fiscal year 2022. That's June 30th of 2022. I'm going to present the financial statement highlights before I turn it over to Brian, and he will go over the audit results. The first thing I wanted to share is that our district continues to receive our Certificate of Excellence on our financial statements for fiscal year 2021. It's both from the Association of School Business Officials International and the Government Finance Officers Association. These awards are issued to districts and governments to commend them for their readability and organization of the financial information that they present. The second piece, as we continue to prepare the supplemental popular annual financial report, this was something that we did new last year to help support that strategic goal of community and engagement. This report is designed more for people who don't have a background in finance, so it's more reader friendly. So some highlights on general fund is here's a 5-year trend in the popular annual report. You can see that in 2022, our revenue did significantly decrease about $5 million, but over our expenditures by function are still spent about 81% directly on schools. And then our expenditures by type, we do spend 86% of our expenditures on salaries and benefits for our employees. Moving on, general fund balance. There is an Alaska state statute that restricts how much fund balance we can accumulate in general fund. At the end of June 30th of 2022, that percentage was at 0, which is out of compliance with Board Policy 412, which expects that we have a 6 to 8% fund balance in general fund, which is between 12 and $14 million, or no, $14 to $16 million. Moving on to other funds to highlight is student transportation. You can see that our revenue did increase in student transportation, and that's because it's directly tied to our student enrollment, which did increase in 2022. But our expenditures decreased, and we attribute this to both the new vendor Durham, and then Durham did have some issues with recruiting drivers, and so they weren't able to provide as many routes in 2022 as expected. Nutrition services had a substantial increase, both in revenue and expenses, and that's because for the entirety of fiscal year 2022, all students were able to participate in the National School Lunch Program, which doubled the number of meals they provided for both breakfast and lunch. We expect those numbers to return to more of the trend of 2018 through 2020 going forward. Back to the financial statements. The very beginning of the financial statements is a section called the Management's Discussion and Analysis. And this is a very condensed narrative that explains the financial results. If you don't want to peruse all 232 pages, this is kind of where you'll get the meat of your information that goes over everything in the financial statements. Towards the end of the management's discussion analysis, it talks about things that the district had to consider in preparing the budget for 2023. And so I'll kind of go over those because they are still things that we're having discussions on as we're going into budgeting for 2024. So foundation funding, we've been using Hold Harmless, and that is coming to a close. Our student enrollment for 2023 was still below our actual student enrollment for fiscal year 2020. We still have increased pressures related to salary and benefits for health costs. And going into fiscal year 2024, we expect to only have about $4.2 million of CARES money available. So before I hand it off to Brian to go over the audit report, I just wanted to thank him and his team. This was our first year with Altman Rogers and Company. We had switched from Alliance CPA, and overall we noticed a positive experience from both the accounting department and then the other departments that get involved, especially the grant managers. They were able to meet with us at different times than our previous audit firm, which reduced a lot of the stress of start of school and having to find time with our old audit firm to meet with them. So I did hear lots of positive feedback in the experience with them, and they were very helpful in sharing their resources with us in order to make certain implementations of new accounting standards more easy and efficient on our team. So we do express that gratitude towards them. And we look forward to auditing 2023. Come this summer. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing in case Brian has something.
Okay, so thank you, Nico. I'll be really brief. I've already used up all my babysitter hours, so I kind of have to be a little rushed through this. But if there's any questions, by all means, holler out and get my attention. I'll start before I talk about the audit reports. I'll talk just real briefly about the audit process and what we do as part of our audit engagements. We do a test work-based audit approach where we're actually going to test the various internal control systems of the organization, with the goal being to place reliance upon those systems so that we can reduce the amount of substantive audit work that we have to do related to the engagement in terms of our financial statement audit. So we'll test the cash disbursement system, the cash receipts system, any billing systems, payroll, internal control systems. In addition to that, we select a materiality threshold where we'll audit every transaction that is greater than that materiality threshold. During that process, we're reviewing the internal controls over a transaction cycle, so making sure that the adequate controls are in place, the transactions are being properly reviewed, approved, agree with support, coded correctly, posted correctly into the accounting system. Then if we test the system and we don't have any errors, we can essentially then rely on the internal controls of the organization over that specific area and reduce the amount of substantive audit work that we had to do. So during that internal control process, we did not have any findings or issues related to our testing of internal control, which is great. The threshold for a finding over these areas is quite low. All it takes is be a couple transactions pulled out of our sample that were not properly approved or were done for the wrong amount or didn't agree with the supporting documentation, then you'd see a finding in the report related to those transactions. So it's really easy to get findings. So the fact that we didn't have any this year speaks really highly to the internal control structure of the organization. In addition to that, we also go down the balance sheet of the organization, which is the assets and liabilities. We like to tie those to some form of third-party supporting documentation. So like for cash balances or like AR, we try and get some sort of like third-party report. So information from the borough directly in the form of cash, but bank statements, AR reports, we can confirm those with the applicable AR vendors and that sort of thing to audit those transactions. So if there's questions on, what kind of audit procedures we might do over a specific account, I'm happy to talk about those. As part of this engagement, we do an audit over the financial statements, but we also do an audit over compliance with federal programs as well as compliance with state programs. And I'll talk about our opinions for each. So looking over into the audit report itself, I don't know if the board has this in front of them, but the audit opinion, it's on page 23 of the PDF. I don't know if you guys have that, but this is an unmodified opinion over the financial statements, which is the best type of opinion that auditors are allowed to give. Essentially what it says is that in the opinion of the auditors, or in this case, me, the following financial statements are materially correct. So like I said, that's the best type of opinion that an auditor is allowed to give. It's also the most common because anytime there's issues or adjustments that need to be made as part of the audit, typically management will make those adjustments, therefore then presenting the financial statements correctly, so you would still get an unmodified opinion. So where you'd want to go to see any findings related to the audit is towards the back here, and I believe that's starting on page 203 of the PDF. It looks like Nico's running the PDF for me there, so that's great. Thank you. These are our opinions over compliance, and behind these you'll see where we would list out any audit findings if there were any. So that first opinion, there's the government auditing standards opinion that just says that the audit was conducted in accordance with government auditing standards and that there were no material weaknesses, or that's a type of finding related to the financial statements. The second opinion there on the following pages is our opinion over federal compliance. This is the opinion that we do where we've said we've audited the major compliance programs of the entity, and we've tested those compliance programs with requirements given to us by the applicable federal agency of what they want us to look at for each of those major programs, and that this is an unmodified opinion, which means that we're saying that the entity is in compliance with all the requirements related to their major programs. There was also no findings over federal compliance. I'll say that's a very good thing. The threshold for federal compliance findings is very low. If there was a federal program that had quarterly reports and one of those quarterly reports was, say, just, for example, submitted 2 days late, you would see a finding in these financial statements from us as the auditor saying not in compliance with federal reporting requirements related to XYZ program. The third quarterly report was submitted 2 days past the deadline, something like that. So, that's a really low threshold for reporting findings. So once again, it speaks really highly that there aren't any findings related to federal or state programs this year. So if you go down further, we have your schedule of federal expenditures, but then I wanted to point out the schedule of findings and questions costs, this report here. So this is where, if there had been any audit findings related to the engagement, on the bottom of this page, it would basically, those would be called out, and then we would have a whole write-up over any findings that we did have. So there were no findings, so this is just a one-sentence thing, more or less saying that there were no findings, which is, once again, very good. Then further down is our opinion over state compliance. And state compliance is very similar. You'll find that this letter is very similarly worded to the opinion over federal compliance, except this applies to state awards. So we're saying that the entity is in compliance with its major state programs. And then findings, if there were any, for state programs would be on the following pages under the state schedule of findings and question costs. And so they can see at the bottom of this that there were no findings. So I do want to go over the letter to the governing board real quickly and touch on the things in that are more relevant to your analysis. On the middle of page 2, you'll see a section in there called corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So even though that there were no findings, so by finding, what I mean is an error in internal control sufficient enough to warrant the attention of governance. So there was nothing like that. We did post 2 entries as a result of this engagement. Most of these were just sort of in the cleanup process of the financial reporting. So we did $273,000 entry to put the donated commodities. So this is a non-cash item. Actually, both of these adjusting journal entries were non-cash items to get the schedule of federal expenditures correct. And then there was about $1 million in administrative costs donated by the borough that needed to be reported onto the district's financial statements too. And that was a net zero journal entry. It had no effect on the bottom line because it was an in-kind donation where the revenue was exactly equal to the expenses as you would expect for an in-kind transaction. So that's my whirlwind tour of the financial statements. So I'm happy to answer any questions related to the audit.
Is there anybody from the public that has a question concerning our audit report? Thank you. Anybody on the board? Mr. Dorn.
Thank you both for the presentation tonight. The letter of transmittal to the board and those opinion statements that are in the larger report, am I correct that really that letter of transmittal is a sort of a summation or representation of those opinions that are at the end of that report, the full report? Am I correct?
The letter to the governing board makes reference to the opinions that are in the full report. So it actually doesn't summarize them per se. It actually references to them.
Okay. And I appreciate the work that each of you did in bringing it forward, and I'm good with it, but I think just cognizant of some of our comments at the beginning of the meeting, we might look at whether perhaps as part of our public, those opinions might be attached to that. I'm just thinking, but as we're doing a little different process, and I think it's a more significant process, more friendly for everyone to understand, and they can go to the full audited statement and get access to that very easily, relatively easily. But we might just give some thought as to what information we can have at this meeting, next year. So just a thought. Go ahead. I have one other question. One other thing that I can't remember.
Any other comments? Why Mr. Dorn thinks on his question? Ms. Hardy, go right ahead.
Mine is, but it's not for him. So if I know his babysitting time is running short, if he needs to leave, it's more for administration. So I understand that very well. Kind of following what Mr. Doran said, like we were provided a link. It's not available on the school Wi-Fi. Clicking from our email, it wouldn't take me to it. On my laptop, it would on my phone. So I've seen it. But if we could, one, know how to find it on the website. It was made available on the 15th, and I kind of was searching around, and I couldn't find it, and I feel kind of tech savvy. So that would be helpful, knowing where to look for it in the future. The full audit report, since we know it's made available. I was also hoping that in the future, when that audit report is created and made available, if we could have an email just sent out to the board saying, hey, this is live, here's the link, that would solve a multitude of problems, and then we can look at it way ahead of time, and everyone could be prepared. And then my last comment was just, how do we fix the problem of our most experienced treasurer audit rep not having been involved in the process? That seems like a pretty big issue that we should resolve before the next meeting. I think it's great that we had such a clean audit, and I feel pretty comfortable going forward, but that isn't something we should have continue.
So there was an honest translation issue in my communication to Carmen how to get the information in the board packet. So I do apologize that that wasn't there. The intent was to provide both the full financial statements and the popular annual report as well. I did note down sending an email to the board upon issuance. Altman Rogers and Company has a different process with the audit committee than our previous auditors, Alliance CPA. Alliance CPA used to schedule several one-on-one meetings with both our district, the borough, and IGU separately. And in the spring, when we met with Altman Rogers for the first time, Altman Rogers preferred to schedule just one meeting with the entirety of the audit committee. So if we have different expectations, then that would be something that in the spring, when we meet with them again to start our planning, that we can communicate in advance with them so they can meet those needs. In the spring, when we did meet, Aaron Marati was not our audit committee member, and the audit committee member at that time was okay with the change in the process. So as you guys spoke about onboarding new board members, I kind of made a note about, maybe having a welcome to the audit committee and giving them that kind of like that outline. I feel whether or not they're a returning audit committee member, as Ms. Marati is or not, having that information available would also be useful for them.
Mr. Doran.
And I remembered, could we just get a copy of the slide PowerPoint that you gave tonight? It's a little different than the one that was in our packet. It's fine. It's just an updated one.
Okay.
And but it's also, I liked some of the formatting that it did there. So that'd be great.
Okay. Any email that to Carm for you guys? Okay.
Okay. Trying to see where I am. Are we at the vote stage? Calling for the vote? There was.
Are you ready, President Sanderson?
I believe so.
We made the motion.
Yeah, we had a motion.
Colonel Surrey?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Marati?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Doran?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Burnett?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
All righty, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Next on our agenda is the approval of the 2023-2024 legislative priorities. Our objectives is communication and engagement, ensure students, staff, families, and communities are informed, connected, and engaged with the district. The board's legislative committee met on January 10th to review, update, and develop the 2023-2024 legislative priorities. The committee draft of the 2023-2024 legislative priority document is before the board for approval. Do we have any comments from the public? And do we have any comments from the board? Oh, yes, do we have a motion? Sorry. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Move to approve the 2023-2024 legislative priorities.
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Dorn, you have a comment?
Yeah, I like the one-page format regarding it, and the focus on the things that are really most important. And I think, especially at this time, if we don't get more money, we're going to have less services to kids, period. There's no thing. We're going to lose staff, period. So that is really key. I like the increase of the BSA to 6,800, which represents just bringing it to current dollars. I am concerned that that we look at that only as a minimum. That is not an investment in public education, and it does not represent making up the years of loss. We have cut. And so that's lost. We're not making up any of that. We can't, that doesn't even bring us, that keeps us par to what we have this year. That does not put anything back into the budget. And so I think that's important. It's a significant increase, but we have to promote better. I would love to see us have a higher number, but I can live with this as a starting point as long as we underscore it there. The other thing that I just wanted to say in terms of legislative priorities, I think it is significant not only that these are our priorities, but there are several pre-filed bills right now in education. One was referenced tonight that we need to stay very alert to. There are 3 bills there that add to the teacher's teaching plate. That is significant. The civics bill, and I would make an argument, we teach civics every single year to students throughout the year. They're learning to write, they're learning to speak, they're learning to do math as part of being civics, but our social studies throughout the grades from kindergarten through 12 is built upon that. But the significant thing in that bill is that it also requires students to pass another test to graduate. We teach civics regularly to students. To have them pass another test to graduate is something to be think about. There's also one that's in there that could arguably say that it's discriminatory. But I'd say that as we look at these legislative priorities, I really like the work of the board committee, legislative committee, to bring this forward. I think it's simple, very clear, really is our priority. But that encourage that all of us keep alert to some of these other little, if you want, little bills that do have an impact on our teachers, on our students. And, you know, as when we talk about respect for teachers and for educators, some of that starts with the legislature, and that we promote and advocate for that. So those are my comments on it.
Mrs. Smith?
Thank you. With respect, Ms. Sanderson, would you mind if I just gave a summary of our legislative committee meeting quickly for the public and for the members of our board that were not there?
Sure, feel free.
Thank you. So at our legislative committee meeting, we decided to use this brief document as opposed to the flyer type that we usually use because we wanted this to be a talking points document. We didn't want it to be something that we were hand delivering to people to read. We want the public as well as ourselves to have a document that just has a clear statement on our position on a few key items, and that our committee was very committed to communicating not just these points to our legislators, but to really putting in front of them something dynamic from our district that was showing that we are responsibly using the funds that they're giving us. You know, we discussed at that meeting that the narrative can be that they already give us a lot of money, and what do we do with it? You know, I know, Mr. Doran, this is a pet peeve of yours, that the test scores are low, and, you know, stop throwing money at it is kind of a narrative, and that what we really need to do, rather than make a flyer, is to put those We the People students in front of the legislators and have them understand that without every dollar that they don't fund us takes away their opportunities and their futures. And that was really the sentiment of our committee, was that, yes, we need a document, and here's our document that clearly states our priorities, but that this was really a talking point, and that our administration and the district as a whole really intends to communicate a lot more than this document to our legislators. So I just thought it was important for everyone to understand the conversation that we had there wasn't just what's written on this paper. You know, I think that everyone there, our lobbyists and our administrative staff, as well as the board members that were in attendance, were really in agreement that there's a lot more to be said, and even more than to be said, to be shown. The steps that we've taken, closing schools, consolidating programs, that we're not just, you know, asking for more without doing our part. And that we really have the intention, Ms. Moline could maybe speak to that we really want to communicate that very clearly, because a win for our district is a win for the whole state and all students, and that's really our goal. So that was the goal of our committee, and I wanted to make sure that that was really made clear, that we did have more than this document in mind. Thank you.
Ms. Moline, did you want to add to that? And then
Just in addition to what Mrs. Smith was saying, because the way that modern society consumes information is not necessarily in a flyer or a written word, it was suggested that we create a video or some sort of visual presentation to be shared not only with legislators, but a campaign for the community as well. So giving the community facts that they can then use to advocate with their representatives. So we're working on that right now to get something prepared for this legislative session, so the community can advocate for their children, and we can present what Mrs. Smith was saying about what we are doing, what we have done, and the impacts moving forward without significant funding is going to impact our students and our ability to do our job in a meaningful way. So that's from the administration. That's what we're looking to do, is create a video or some sort of visual presentation for the public.
Thank you, Ms. Moline. Ms. Hardy?
I wanted to thank the committee. You clearly put in time and effort, and it is a great document, and I really love the idea of a video and getting the community involved and helping them better advocate, especially if we can get students involved. I know we've talked about that before, and I specifically wanted to thank Ms. Smith for coming out and being a strong advocate for public education funding, and I know that that is a growth this year, and I wanted to say how much I appreciate that, and how that it's more unanimous, and I think that that will make us far better advocates as a board to help our district get what it needs to, you know, help our students get what they need.
Ms. Maradi?
Yeah, I want to echo a thank you to the committee for the work that they put in, including Ms. Herbie for putting this beautiful document together. I have a question, though. How does the board, not the community, but the board, intend to lobby for these legislative priorities. Since it was decided by the board president that we won't be going down as a board with the other school districts in AASB, and also we don't have a travel budget. So I'm just wondering what's the plan?
So to answer your question, Ms. Marati, in our legislative meeting, we did have discussion about how we wanted to tackle that. And we felt that since new people are coming on board, and there will be a concentration of folk talking with the legislators and processing this, that we would go down at a different time and be able to, and we're looking even further to maybe do some sort of a little small gathering or small meeting where we have, we have their undivided attention. And that's just some of the ways that we're doing it. Another way that I'm working with the student government at different bodies, I've started to go to some schools. Since it's been important for us to have student voices, I remember when I was an A&E tutor that my students, I still have those letters, by the way, took on writing to their legislators and asking them specific questions, and legislators did take time to write back. So I'm engaging in conversation our student council and their student bodies, their officers and the students that are in government, to also come from a student voice, to write to the legislators and impact and talk to the legislators about when our board has been forced to make decisions to cut a program or to remove a class. The students are being invited to engage in this process to state to those legislators when funding is removed, the impact that it has had on them as a student in our district, and the impact it has had on their academic achievement and goals that they've set for themselves. That's what we're engaged in at this time.
May I follow up?
Yes.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I love the student voice aspect, and I hope that we can definitely do that and maybe bring some students to Juneau to do that. But since we will be paying for our own way down, yep, I hope you will consider opening up that invitation to the entire board and not just keep it inclusive to the legislative committee. I think we all have a voice, and I think that we should all be invited to go together as a group.
Thank you for your input. Mr. Doran?
I really appreciate those suggestions and the efforts of the committee and this paper to promote parents and students as advocates. They are the strongest advocates for public education. We're an important voice as well as with all our staff, but students and parents carry a lot of weight. I was thinking that it may also be good, and if we can work through Mr. Ringstad, our lobbyist, if legislators are having local town halls, I know sometimes there are a number of them, sometimes there are virtually none, sometimes they're last minute, but he would be in a position if we could ask him to really let us know. And I've attended a number of them over the years, and it's a powerful opportunity to speak. But if we have that ahead of time, as soon as they're known, perhaps we can make sure that we have at least one board member able to attend and speak on our behalf. The other that was, I thought, pretty productive. Mr. Ringstad had helped to put together a virtual meeting with the Interior Delegation, and which means that all our board members could also attend. It would be a virtual and have a discussion on that. And so those may be two other things that are ways of not being costly, but that we can really advocate and have a voice.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. Ms. Barnett?
I would like to reiterate that I really enjoy the idea that Mrs. Smith put forward about the We the People kids. It'd be really amazing to see them put forward, especially with them coming here today, two of them speaking in front of us. They're very well spoken. And if there's one thing I know, it's really hard to say no to kids. Also, the narrative going around right now is not the best in our favor. And I think that it's really important that all of us advocate in a way that is the same. All of us sing the same song. All of us go to Juneau, and all of us make sure they understand exactly the situation that we are in. To say no to a kid statewide, all of our children, there's not a single person out there, I think, that could do that if we all go singing the same song that we need to do. And that's that we are in unprecedented times. And I know that the narrative is that we don't have money due to waste or whatever it is they're saying out there. I want to remind the public that we are in times that nobody nationwide knew how to handle. A lot of our financial issues are also a stem of COVID, of losing children in our school district. We didn't just tank, we lost revenue. And that is something that we are struggling to find ways to overcome. And looking at next year, it's pretty detrimental, the things that could come up. So if we could change that narrative and make it a point to know that our children are what matter here, and our children are our future, and our children need funding. Our children need our legislatures to say, okay, we're going to help you. I also plan to, if anybody listens to the Michael Dukes show, there was a Mrs. Smith listened to it the other day, and it didn't bode well for us. And so I have made arrangements with Michael Dukes, and I'm going to get with Mr. DeGraw and go over some things, but I would like to go on and rebuttal and advocate for us hard. It is very important that the public understands that we are all here. We are all ready to do the work that it's going to take, and we need to fund the schools for our children statewide.
Thank you, Ms. Barnett. Mr. Dorn?
My last comment on this is, as we're talking about the legislative priorities, some of the same discussions need to happen with the borough and the assembly for their local contribution, our local contribution, so that we keep that in mind. These, yes, legislative is that big picture, the state legislature. We are most dependent on them and need them to step forward, but we also are dependent and need the borough to step forward. So,
Thank you, Ms. Doran. Mrs. Smith?
Thank you. Ms. Sanderson, I'd like to recommend that the board consider making an ad hoc committee for advocacy, and that the board, I'm not sure exactly how to do it, but vote on the members of the committee, that they're not just chosen by the president, or that the board at least nominate members. You know, what I'm talking about is putting always our best foot forward, and using the talents and the assets that we have on our board to our benefit. So when we go to the borough to do our presentation, we have traditionally just come to the borough, and the president of the board, you know, is reading a report or saying a little something. But I think that we have a lot more to offer. I think that we should convene a small ad hoc committee to really create a presentation for the borough, and to also create a presentation maybe for local legislators, that we really just need to do more than show up there with a little 2-minute speech asking them for money. And that I would personally like to be a part of that conversation. I'd like our board to choose the representation that they would send for this conversation, and that we all just really consider making an effective presentation, because I feel that the last few years that I've been on the board, the presentation has not been effective, and that if we don't communicate effectively, we are never going to get what we need or what we want. And So I just, through the chair, like that to be a consideration going forward.
All right, thank you. So now we're ready for the vote on the legislative priority.
Ms. Anderson, if I might.
Oh, I'm sorry,
just-
Ms. Moline.
That's okay. I just wanted to make sure that the board knew that, that we haven't waited for any legislative session to start, that Mr. DeGraw and I and
Yes.
Mr. Ringsted have already started an advocacy campaign. We've met with all of the interior delegates except for one, and had the same conversation with each of those legislators. And so our delegation had already heard loud and clear our message, and a consistent message. And now we need to prepare a format that it can go viral, if you will, to families, legislators, to a greater audience.
Thank you, Ms. Moline. Ms. Pullen, can we have the vote?
Yes. Miss Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Colonel Surrey?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you. Miss Marati?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Doran?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Burnett?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
Yes, Mr. Doran.
Could I ask a point of order? And it might just be my mind freeze. Going back to the audit report, there was some question, did we make a motion? And I think we did, and I thought I heard a second to it, but I wasn't.
Yes, we did.
Well, it's funny, Mr. Doran, in my notes, I've been going back and forth with that. I don't have who made the motion. I have our original when we did an amendment
So
at the
could we-
very beginning.
Okay, great. So could we just go back for clarity?
Sure.
Make the motion and take the vote? So there is no question about that. We take the vote on it. I think we're technically okay because we know what the motion was printed, but I think it's,
Yes,
for
we
clarity.
took the vote, but we need to the motion.
Is that okay with you,
Sure,
President Sanders?
let's make that
Okay.
correction.
Just make sure that it's clear. So I move to approve the FY 2021-2022 financial statement and auditor's report.
Second?
Thank you.
Thank you.
And then let's retake the vote.
And now, Ms. Pullen, would you please call for the vote?
Colonel Surrey?
Yes.
Thank you. Miss Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Miss Marati?
No.
Thank you. Mr. Doran?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Burnett?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Hardy?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Sanderson?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carried.
All right, thank you, Ms. Pullen.
Thank you, Mr. Doran.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. So our last item on the agenda for information reports is the K-12 English Language Arts Material Grant Report. Chanveen is unable to be here this evening, so Michelle Damo, Curriculum Coordinator with Teaching and Learning, will provide the report on K-5 English Language Arts Material. Thank you, Ms. Damo.
So while Mrs. Dammel is setting up, I'd like to just say an extra thank you to her. Originally, Executive Director Beam would be doing this presentation, but he was caught in the travel vacuum. So Mrs. Dammel stepped in last minute, and she has been a part of this process from the very beginning. So she can answer all of our questions, but I do want to express my appreciation to her for stepping in.
Except for I'm not doing it very well. So. Share. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There we go. So thank you for letting me speak tonight about the K-5 English Language Arts Material Grant. You said K-12, so I wanted to make sure. Yeah, but it's K-12, it's K-5. This materials grant, like I said, is just information regarding it, but it is a core curriculum grant initiative by the Department of Ed.
Ms. Damo, if you'll speak a little closer into the microphone, I think they're having trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me now? So again, this is a K-5 ELA core curriculum grant initiative, and it is given to us by the Department of Education from the state of Alaska. This is based on the strategic priorities from the Alaska Education Challenge. The number one being to support all students to read at grade level by the end of 3rd grade. And strategies to achieve that, the one that this grant is focused on is the evidence-based materials. Any materials that we've ever purchased have always been evidence-based, going through Ed Reports, looking for those. And if you've never been to Ed Reports, it has to meet all different levels of qualifications. So that was another reason we liked this grant. And the initiative, what this core initiative is, it also goes along with the Alaska Reads Act, the Alaska Science of Reading, and the Department of Education will offer guidance and support to districts through a grant process to select and implement an elementary evidence-based core reading curriculum with the emphasis on culturally responsive implementation methods. So all districts were invited. Superintendent had to approve our participation, and participating districts needed to have a team commitment of no more than 5 people. So we have 5 people on our team. We have more people on the team, but the 5 people are who report and who the state pays to go to trainings. So we have one administrator, which is Teresa Lesage, who's Anderson Crawford principal. We have Catherine Fairman, who's a teacher at Wood River, and then myself, Mackenzie Steiger, who's our elementary curriculum coach, and the executive director, Jane. So this group was looked through Tier 1 multi-tiered systems, and first thing they did as the grant, they went through and asked everyone in the state what are the programs people are currently using. If you can see there, 26% were using Journeys, which is the program that we currently use, and then it went down. 2% of districts in the state don't use it. Adopted K-3 program. So here's the timeline that we followed. So the grant was announced on October 27th. They had a webinar in November for all of the interested districts. There were probably close to 30 districts on that original webinar. The publisher webinars, the state then selected 7 programs that they went through and found that were evidence-based, culturally relevant, went through their whole rubric. These were the 7 that they came up with. And then on December 7th, we watched all of those webinars from those vendors. They were also recorded so people could watch them after. But each vendor got an hour to talk to everyone. Then we as a district, our group, got to decide the 4 that we thought would best fit our district. We sent in our top 4, and then after we sent in our top 4, we were awarded a notification that we would receive 1.6 or close to $1.7 million for this grant, for this purchase. These, if you'll notice, the one was topped over off the top, that top one. One of our top 4 was the one that has the slash through it. We also were doing Amplify, CK, LA, Benchmark Advanced, and HMH into reading. And just for transparency, HMH into reading is Journeys that we're using now. it's their new and improved version. The reason we have crossed off EL education, after they did their presentation and we dove into it a little bit further, we realized that all it was PDFs, like 700 pages of PDFs, and you would have to go through and find all those. And we just didn't think our staff would be that excited about that. It did not also work with ClassLink, which is what we use to, our platform to has all our programs on. So January 17th to March 10th, which is now, teachers are going to give their input on options. So we have gotten materials from the top three now that we chose, Amplify, Benchmark, and Into Reading. We've been inventorying them. We're going to get them out, and we're going to kind of go on a road show where we take them out to schools and have each schools get to look at them and then put in their input for them. Out of those, the top two we'll put out for public comment. The curriculum committee will look at the board curriculum. The committee will make a recommendation, the school board first reading, and hopefully by May 2nd, we'll have you vote that. Because there are two things in the middle of that this group will, that group of 5 goes to. Next week is the RTI conference, which we are doing a day before, which the presenters, the vendors, those vendors will all be there to do presentations. And then before the Alaska Reading Symposium, there's another day where we get to meet and discuss more of the grant. So the bottom line of this is Journeys, our current program, is being discontinued. That's another reason we really want to jump on this. Our online access will end June of 2024, so for us, this is perfect timing. Fairbanks North Scarborough School District was one of only 16 districts, and actually that's gone down to 15 in the last week, that are gonna participate in this grant out of everyone that applied. Told you about the 7 publishers, and now down to 4, and like we have narrowed it down to 3, and we will keep everyone informed, give feedback, make a recommendation to the school board. And that's like a quick overview, since I know it's after 9. Is there any questions regarding?
Ms. Burnett?
I just want to say thank you so much as curriculum chair for your hard work and being here in Shane's absence. Seeing the same thing in curriculum committee and such, just thank you very much.
Thanks.
Move to extend to 9:45.
Second, we have to extend. Unless we're going to quit right now.
Were there any other
questions?
Mrs. Dorn?
Okay. I've got several, so I'll go, and you can pause me and put someone else in. Okay, top 3 to start. Okay, and Ms. Moline, if I'll do them through you, because since Ms. Stammel has stepped in, I don't know where that is. You guys can decide. Okay, so one of my questions, and you may have referenced this, you said we have a core team of 5, but there are more involved. And what my concern is typically we would have a district curriculum committee, separate from the board, curriculum committee, of teachers in the field who would have a chance to come together and talk about these. I really like the fact that we're sending these out and making the webinars available to everyone. We're going to have more copies, I understand, that'll be available at individual schools so that people can look at them. But I am concerned about what our practice has been in a core curriculum adoption, which this actually is. And I think we can meet that, but we have to have that conversation from those in the classrooms that we do in every other disciplinary area. So that's one of my questions, is how we are meeting that district curriculum adoption part of our process, committee conversation.
So first of all, I want to make sure that we have a distinction between what curriculum is and what materials are. This is just materials. We're not writing curriculum. The curriculum is staying the same. These are just materials that are supporting the curriculum. That group of 5 was only to get those out of that 7 that the state had put on. We still will have a lot more people involved because all of those, everything is going out with rubrics and different things and different avenues for people to respond about the materials. So there'll be videos that will be posted so community can look. There's going to be the materials here first. So that process is not changed at all. We've never had like a huge group, especially in the last couple of years. We've hardly had that many people on as a committee that meets. It's been mostly people coming in and out, filling out rubrics, filling out questionnaires, filling out surveys, looking at those materials. So I just want to make sure that, because the writing of curriculum, you're correct. We've had a process, we've had people, we've done all those different things, but we're not doing that. We're just doing the materials part.
Follow up on that one. And thank you for clarifying that distinction between curriculum and curriculum materials, because that was a confusion that I had because the grant says curriculum.
Right.
And previous conversation, this is only the materials.
Right, and I think a lot of that is because curriculum, and a lot of the smaller districts, this is their curriculum since this is statewide.
And so, but my question then is just clarification on that. We've often had the curriculum committee then go through materials and narrow that down. So I just want to make sure we're meeting that practice within our district. So there's the 5 that did some, but there's more. Who's the more? Is that just
It's almost everyone in our office, and then there's other people on that. The 5 is only the 5 people that the state will pay for to go to trainings.
Right.
We
But
do have other
we're not
people.
pulling a group of our teachers together to have a conversation.
That will be on the surveys. That's not any different than our other times we've done programs.
It is, well, it may be, okay.
In the last couple of years, we
So-
just haven't had enough participation to do. And I actually think that this is better because we're taking the materials to the schools. We've never done that before.
On the materials, question 2 is, are these, before I start looking them up and stuff, are the materials physical materials or they're mostly digital? Where's we're
both.
going?
There's one that was 100% digital and we didn't pick that one because we needed hard copies.
Okay, because I've been looking at
one
some
of our-
studies recently about really teaching reading. It needs to be.
No, so we have
Okay.
every program we picked has both.
Great, thank you. And my third question, prioritized question is regarding the money figure. Thank you that we've got an actual number now from the state. And Ms. Smoline, in previous conversation, you had indicated approximately, it would be $1.5 million if we were just doing this on our own. My question then had been that we were potentially not getting enough. But it looks like now, am I correct to say that we should have enough to be able to provide for the district?
I would say this is ample funding for the kind. In fact, I might say if we can't do it for that, then we need to look at a different program because the programs that we're looking at, this would fully cover the purchase.
Okay, and let me pause there then.
Ms. Burnett.
I just have a comment through the chair for Mr. Doran. Mr. Beam and I discussed in a meeting last week about how to properly get teachers and public involved in having some say in what's happening and how to get them here. And at no cost to the district, I'm going to be helping and assisting getting communication out there to our teachers, to our community, so that we may have proper comment when it comes to not just this, but all of our curriculum that we have this year. Thank you.
2 more?
Maybe I can make it as one.
Okay, that would be great. That'd be good. Thank you.
So, my question is in terms of context and understanding the bigger context for this this initiative, and I appreciate the support from the state for this, and particularly with journeys going out of publication. The implications for our staff, other aspects of the Alaska Reads Act that we know how they're coming, like we do know third grade will not be impacted this year, but next year. Am I correct on that?
With these materials? Or with?
Well, with the third grade, a part of the Alaska Reads Act, of which this is supportive, the possible potential ramifications for third graders who may be deemed as not reading is at grade level is next year, not this year.
Right, according to the law.
Right.
The law that was passed. And I will say, while this this particular grant supports the Alaska Reads, the Alaska Education Challenge, it's not directly tied to the Reads Act. It's really separate pieces that complement each other. So we will get a presentation from the state later about the Reads Act and the pieces in the Reads Act and what, the more detailed of that. This is something that we're participating in that is a complement to the overall Alaska Education Challenge work that started before the Alaska Reads Act and will continue after the Alaska Reads Act, that this is all a part of our vision as a state to make sure that we have readers in our elementary school, high school, and middle schools. So they're not, while they're complementary, they're not under the same thing.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And when we get more of that information on the implications of the Reads Act, that you keep us informed early on those. Great, thank you.
If there are no further comments, we move to the, board comments. Ms. Stammel, thank you for your sharing your information with us. I appreciate you being here. I would like to start our board comments with Colonel Surrey.
Nothing to add tonight, thanks.
All right, sir, we appreciate you being with us and thank you. Ms. Marati?
No, thank you.
Ms. Olivia?
I just wanted to say, I think North Pole's the only one doing a musical this year because the rest of the music departments are going on a trip instead. But the Anything Goes musical will be happening at North Pole early February. I just saw the dates. I don't remember them though. I'm really excited about that. I'm working backstage for that. It's going to be very fun. What else did I want to say? Choir concerts are coming up. It's Music in Our Schools month starting in March. And so I know that's 2 months away, but heads up. It's really, really cool. The choirs are working on some really cool pieces and I'm excited for everyone to share them. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Burnett?
Just want to say a big thank you first to Mrs. Galloway for her We the People kids coming in today, and congratulations going out to them. Such a wonderful thing she's doing. Thank you to our admin over here who are always here through these long meetings. Also, I just want to thank Tanana Middle School and Ryan Middle School. Miss Hardy and I had the pleasure of going and visiting and doing some tours of those two. We look forward to visiting North Pole Middle and Randy Smith, as well as our elementary schools. We are coming. Speaking of elementaries, we also got to participate and go to U Park and watch the music class and the gym class do kind of a collaboration of sorts. And it was just a delight to be able to see those kids and just the enjoyment on their faces. So thank you for the invite to U Park for that. And just hope everyone has a great week and look forward to visiting more schools. Thank you.
Mr. Dorn?
Thank you. The Board Budget Committee is going to have their next meeting on February 23rd. And so we'll have a chance to get their perspective on the proposed budget that will have been previously presented to the board and the public. So we look forward to that. Wanted to say that the museum education department will be starting their school students tours next week, and there's a great group of docents working with that. They're all volunteers, and they do a great program, so appreciate their partnership with our district in providing those opportunities for students to go to the museum. Want to thank the borough for discussing and hopefully taking action on addressing the heating situation at Hutch. Was very pleased with the mayor's sponsorship of an ordinance and to get that on the calendar, and that the assembly put it on the calendar, moved ahead with that. I know they're in the process of discussing that, but that's a really significant thing. No, it is. It will come up on the 26th. It was postponed to their meeting on the 26th. So hopefully that'll pass, but really appreciate that effort from the borough to support and use the school maintenance funds that are over there under their auspices for our schools. Very, very significant. And then lastly, I just wanted to say that I am really pleased we've got a solid 2 months of nonstop action on the budget and the superintendent search. That it's going to be full. It's going to take all of our efforts, but I think it's an exciting opportunity for us, and look forward to that we keep the public informed and involved through that. There are details to be worked out as we go through that whole process, but it's an exciting time, a challenging time, but it's all for kids. When we talk about student-focused, the reason we're doing it is specifically for our students and for the children of our community. So, and that's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Doran. Ms. Hardy?
Mine are just two things that are coming up. Boreal Sun is hosting a math night that is actually a collaboration with a teacher from North Pole High School, and some of the students are coming out, and it's open to the public and should be really wonderful with all forms of door prizes, and a lot of effort has gone into this from the Boreal Sun community. The Children's Museum will be there, other people, so if board members wanted to come check that out, or any community members, bring your kids. It's at 5:30 this Friday. And then another fun thing coming up from Boreal Sun is their winter fair, which will be February 4th at 11 a.m. And that is also a event for the entire community. Come in, see what that's about. There's crafts and all kinds of fun things, and it's the first time it's been held post-pandemic. So great things to come see.
Thank you. Ms. Smith? Mrs. Smith?
Thank you. I just want you to know that I actually do appreciate your effort to say Mrs. Smith. So, I know it's funny, but
I was a Mrs. Smith once upon a time, so.
You probably only Miss Smith, Joya. I also went to U Park, and Miss Nichols invited us, and I thought it was going to be something else. So I thought they were doing a play or a show. And so I took my little 3-year-old daughter because she said, oh yeah, bring her, it's fine. And it turned out that it was an entire hour of waltzing and square dancing. And it was just really impressive because they had all of the kindergarten. We went for kindergarten because what's better than kindergarten? So we just had such a good time, and the students really knew what they were learning in there. And that was what really impressed me, because they were just 5 and 6-year-olds. And I said, this isn't what I thought we were going to do. And they said, well, this is what we always do. And then they really helped us and they really engaged my little daughter who came there. And they were not just running around in the gym to music. Those kids were pretty cool. And they, the collaboration of music and PE, it definitely worked. And you could see that some of the students who would not really engage in music otherwise were engaged in it because it was PE. And some of the kids who wouldn't really engage in PE otherwise were really engaged in it because it was music. So I just want to thank Ms. Nichols for that. And also just generally thank the district for all kinds of interesting things that they put on. And over the Christmas break, you know, I had my own students just talking to me elaborately about all of the different things they do. And we're working through our plans all the way through spring break with our family and just thinking, we are so busy because we're doing amazing things with school. You know, my son went to the ROTC trip there to Eagle River, and he just is new to ROTC, and he was so engaged and so appreciative of the opportunity. And to just say that our family is really appreciative of the programs and the people who put in the after school time to really make all of those things happen. You know, my daughter's learning in culinary class, and they're not just presenting information. They're saying, hey, what's lacking in your skills? How can we help you make those things happen? And so a lot of people say, well, what are you doing with that money that the legislature doesn't want to give us? And what they're doing with it is everything. And if the families in our community are willing to engage fully in their own students' education, our district just has everything to offer. You know, I just really can't express enough that when people say there's nothing going at school or it's the worst, we all need to personally reflect on whether that might be a reflection of our own engagement as a community. And so just over the Christmas break, our family really reflected, why are we getting so much out of school? And it's really because we choose to get so much out of school, and we're really engaging. And I would just encourage the whole community to really take a step back and say, do I take advantage of everything there is to offer from this district? Because there is so much. And to really just look into our own homes and say, are we reaching, helping our students, because they belong to us, the parents, not to the school district. Are we helping our students to get everything they can from the money that the legislature gives us now and that we're asking for in the future? So that's just my challenge to the community, is to spend the second semester fully engaging in your students' education and fully engaging in advocacy for your students' education.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And my final comments, I got to get in on the tail end of that presentation. And it was fifth and sixth graders, and they were swing dancing, and they had steps I didn't have. And so when I was talking with Ms. Nixon, she was saying, yeah, you know, there's some things we'd like to do, but we don't have volunteers. So I have my volunteer packet that I will be filling out, and I'm going to challenge the board when you have fit another thing into your thing. But sometimes they're not able to fully engage because they don't have the people to chaperone and be there. So, but it was a wonderful experience. So, thank you. Ms. Moline, do you have any closing comments for us tonight?
I would just like to put an exclamation point on the things that Ms. Smith said, and then the other board members that highlighted things that are going on in our schools. Whatever you saw is multiplied across the district every day. We have a group of excellent educators that are doing their very best to engage families and educate students. So So we do have a lot to offer in our district, and we do have a good system that is working hard to engage families and the education of their own students. And then finally, I would just like to remind the board that in the budget process, last year we did close the print shop, so you will not be getting printed proposed budgets. So I just want you to be prepared for the PDF as opposed to the printed budget. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Moline. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
We are adjourned. Thank you for your help and work tonight, board.